As I say, I think we've got one we can take out probably here. So we'll probably end up right nearly there, aren't we? Order, order. I call Ben Goldsborough to move the motion.
Thank you, Sir Jeremy. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I beg to move that this House has considered e-petitions 727360 and 727356 relating to the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain. The excellent staff on the Petitions Committee have been as diligent as ever, and thanks to their hard work, I have had some very informative meetings with experts and campaign groups. I want to quickly thank the Migration Observatory, the Joint Council for Welfare of Immigrants, Hong Kong Watch and the Centre for Policy Studies for taking the time to discuss the policy with me. I also want to thank Darwin, the creator of the petition titled Keep the 5-Year Indefinite Leave to Remain Pathway for Existing Skilled Worker Visa Holders, for the fascinating and moving conversation we had last week. Before turning to the detail, I want to say why today's debate matters. It is timely because the public discourse on immigration grows louder. Fuelled by the algorithms of X and Facebook, we also see those who peddle the idea that you can have your cake and eat it, lower migration, but without the consequences to our economy, our NHS, our diplomacy, or our culture. They are charlatans trying to hoodwink the public with slogans on the side of buses. They want to divide us and set the tone that all immigration is bad, and by extension that all migrants are unwelcome. But that is not our country. That is not who we are. The moral compass of the vast majority of Britons points firmly in the other direction. This debate is our chance to show that careful deliberation is needed, managed migration done well strengthens us, it grows our economy, it enriches our culture, and it gives us the diplomatic heft to punch above our weight on the world stage. First, I want to address one specific point, something experts have raised with me multiple times now, is the need for a clear and honest conversation about what these changes mean, and the need for a clear distinction between immigration pathways and the different types of immigration. So let's be clear at the start about what we have and have not been asked to discuss here today. We are not here to debate asylum claims or the graduate route or small boats or ancestry visas. The 164,000 and 108,000 people who signed these two petitions are asking us to consider two precise things: the 5-year pathway for existing skilled worker visa holders and the 5-year pathway for Hong Kong British National Overseas Visas, otherwise known as BNOs. Turning first to skilled workers, there are 3 issues we need to get to grips with. The first is fairness to those already here. The skilled worker visa pathway was only introduced in December 2020. Many people are now close to completing their 5 years, with some just months away. Of course.
I've been contacted by many constituents right across Beckenham and Penge, including Lachlan from Australia, who were en route to qualify for indefinite leave to remain, but now feel uncertain about their future. Would my honourable friend agree with me that clarity around the government's earned settlement scheme and the retrospective effect of changes to indefinite leave to remain would be warmly welcomed by hard-working constituents like Lachlan and others across Beckenham and Penge in the country who want to make Britain their permanent home?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, because it goes to show not only that he's probably seen my speech, what's coming next, but it is a uniform measure that's been spoken to me, both in chairing this debate going forward, but also in terms of those that have reached out to their MPs. As I say, go on.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way in, and I'm really pleased with the way he's presenting this debate. I think, does he agree with me that there are many of us who absolutely agree with what he's saying about the way that the immigration debate is being utilised and weaponised, but also believe that the level of legal migration is too high, support the government in getting a grip on this and trying to make sure that those who come here are delivering, but also recognise that there's some people who are going to be affected who are already delivering and need to be properly considered.
It's an extremely good point made by my honourable friend. As I said at the start of this speech, migration managed well, benefits us all. And that's what the government, I understand, is trying to achieve, and that's one thing that we need to support. As I say, the prospect of applying changes retrospectively has caused huge anxiety for people who have uprooted their families, made financial sacrifices and planned their futures on a basis of clear rules. This feels, as one put to me, like running a marathon and halfway through realising the rules have changed.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's being very generous with his time, but it's because this debate is so popular. We've received so many emails from constituents, like I have, from my constituents in Hampstead and Highgate, who are high-skilled constituents who are worried about these transitional arrangements because they are existing visa holders and they have spent a lot of money investing in trying to stay here, including those who've emailed me saying they've already passed the Life in the UK test. So could I ask him if he agrees with me that changing the ILR qualifying period retrospectively, because of the financial and hardship distress that it's causing our constituents, it would make sense to have a clear exemption for those who are already on a qualifying visa route?
I thank my honourable friend, and I think this is another issue that I know the Minister, newly to his point, will be addressing in his remarks. The second issue that I want to raise is exploitation. A longer route to settlement may embolden bad employers. We already know that 40,000 people in limbo in the social care sector because of an exploitative bosses and the visa sponsorship pressures. Extending the pathway risks increasing the vulnerability of workers who are already contributing to our society. I would therefore ask the Minister, has any assessment been carried out on the workplace impact of these proposals? Can I just make a little bit more progress? Sorry. The third issue is contribution. These are skilled workers. We invited them here because we need their skills. They are in work, paying tax, helping our economy, staffing our hospitals, caring for our elderly, carrying out world-leading research. In my own constituency of South Norfolk, skilled workers at the Norwich Research Park are engaged in science that could revolutionise food security and tackle the climate crisis. At the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital, I saw a board listing dozens of nationalities represented in the workforce. It looked like a roll call of the United Nations. And yet these staff, while giving so much, have no access to public funds. They pay the £1,000 a year immigration and health surcharge. They support our economy, but carry on their own costs. That is a reality we must recognise. So my question to the Minister is this. Has the government conducted an economic impact assessment of the proposed changes to the skilled worker pathway?
I do thank my honourable friend for his speech and for those who've secured this debate. In terms of those, many of my constituents are highly skilled. They often work in IT. Some are not intending to stay and will probably, may well go home. But those who have written to me have told me what it means for them. But it's not just their current job now, but they see themselves contributing long-term through their skilled work jobs, maybe making a career, climbing up the career ladder and becoming managers and leaders in their field in the long term. But this decision appears to make that possibility very uncertain. And also HR managers, how do they feel about this decision when they're recruiting many of these skilled people from overseas?
I think, Honourable Friend, I think this is a really important thing, is not just the here and now, but the future. And we always need to be, when we're legislating, we need to be legislating for the future, not just for now as well. I'm just going to move on, if that's okay. So now turning to the second part of the petition, the second debate that we're taking part. On the Hong Kong BNOs, the moral case is overwhelming. We must remember why this scheme exists. It was created in response to Beijing's national security law, when freedoms and rights of Hong Kongers were crushed. People fled oppression. They came here trusting Britain to keep its word. Some of those now living in our country have spoken out against the Chinese government. Going back to Hong Kong is unthinkable for them. And colleagues should be under no illusion about what people are fleeing. In mainland China, repression is systematic. We have seen the incarceration of over 1 million Uyghur Muslims, the silencing of dissent, and the routine use of mass surveillance against ordinary citizens. In Hong Kong, once one of Asia's freest societies, we have seen the steady erosion of rights guaranteed by international treaty. Freedom of the press strangled, freedom of assembly banned, civil society dismantled piece by piece, journalists jailed, students arrested, opposition politicians barred from office or driven into exile. All of this in a place where people used to enjoy liberties very similar to our own.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Does he agree with me that, similar to the Hong Kong situation, we now have the Ukrainian situation where people here on the Homes for Ukraine visas have been here for now over 4 years, and we should be considering adopting those into the 5-year period to remain in this country? Thank you.
Thank the honourable member for his intervention. I know the Minister will be listening to that point he raised. So when Hong Kongers tell us they're worried about the direction of travel, we must listen, because they have already lived it. They know what it means when promises are broken. They know what it means when the state decides to rewrite the rules halfway through the journey. That is why this debate is not just about visa terms, it's about trust and whether Britain will stand by its word. Just going to carry on. It's, we in this country have always had a proud tradition of standing up for international bullies. When others looked away, Britain was often prepared to say no. This is not right, and we will not let you trample over your people. That tradition is written into our history, from our stance against fascism in Europe to our support for democratic movements across the world. The BNO scheme is part of that tradition. It told the people of Hong Kong, you are not alone, Britain will stand with you.
Will my friend give way?
Oh.
My friend has been very generous in making excellent remarks. I met Sid, who was in the gallery today at the weekend, and he made many of the excellent points my friend is making. But I wish to speak to the issue of the BNO route he's just mentioned, and the extension from 5 to 10 years looking like us shifting the goalposts. And does he agree that this risks handing Beijing a propaganda victory and deny young Hong Kongers access to home fee status at our universities for a decade?
An extremely well-made point by my honourable friend, and I would say I couldn't put it better myself, but I hope I can in my upcoming bit here. So I would urge the Minister to clarify today, will BNOs be included in these changes? What conversations has the Home Office had with the Foreign Office about the diplomatic consequences of this decision? And does the government regard the BNO scheme as a humanitarian or an economic scheme? Because to my mind, this is clear. This scheme is a humanitarian one, rooted in our duty to protect those who share our values but whose freedoms have been taken away from them. I'm just going to make my concluding remarks. To sum up, both petitions speak to a single principle: fairness. People who came here on a clear set of rules deserve to know what those rules are and that they won't change halfway through. Whether they are skilled workers staffing our hospitals or Hong Kongers seeking refuge from oppression, they are already contributing enormously to our country. In all the discussions about immigration, we must start from honesty about the different types of migration and what they mean for Britain. In recent years, there has been too much heat and not enough light. Today's debate is a chance for us to change that, and I hope the Minister will take the opportunity to provide that clarity.
For introducing the debate. It doesn't need me to point out that this is a very popular debate indeed. So can I remind all members, if you wish to continue to be considered to be called, please continue to stand. And to give you an indication, given the numbers who wish to speak, we will be looking for something like 4 minutes each from you if we're going to get everybody in. So please bear that in mind. The question is that this House has considered e-petitions 727360 and 727356 relating to the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain. Apsana Begum.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be called to this important debate, not least because my constituents are among the highest proportion of signatories to the first petition, keep the 5-year ILR pathway for existing skilled worker visa holders, because so many of whom are living with uncertainty, and that's a daily reality in my constituency. Mr Chair, the Government's Immigration White Paper proposes several measures that will make settlement significantly harder to reach for many people through its main proposals. Firstly, to increase the standard qualifying period for settlement from 5 years to 10 years, though the visa routes to which this will apply are not specifically specified. Secondly, by introducing the so-called earned model of settlement and citizenship, whereby a set of contributions to society and the economy would serve as eligibility criteria for being able to settle more quickly. Now, I understand that there are explicit exemptions for partners of British citizens who will continue to qualify after 5 years, and quite right also for victims of domestic abuse. However, having met and spoken with many of my constituents, urgent clarity is needed from the Minister today. primarily on the following areas: precisely who will be affected by the proposals on the ILR in the Immigration White Paper? Will they be applied retrospectively to people already in the UK, including those approaching the end of a 5-year pathway to settlement? If a consultation is to take place in the autumn, who will this be with? Will the government meet with Praxis, an organisation that has collated numerous evidence and undertaken research, with whom I share a long-standing relationship in my borough, on immigration casework, and who had submitted a letter along with 100 other civil liberties organisations requesting a meeting with the government in May this year? When will the government conduct an equalities impact and human rights impact assessment of its proposals to extend the qualifying period to 10 years and introduce the so-called earned model? And how will the points under the so-called earned settlement proposal be calculated or expect to be earned? And also, how much of a reduction on the 10-year qualifying period will be available? These are incredibly important questions for which the answers are needed by my constituents and many people in our country. My constituents were already living in limbo before the Immigration White Paper was announced, but I have to say, given that the applicants on the ILR route have primarily, their claims have been based on the right to a family or private life, and given what we understand to be a temporary suspension of the family reunification scheme for refugees announced last week, which is of course separate to this, they are just feeling a lot more anxious than ever before about these matters. And I am indeed worried about the widening scope of legislation and frameworks around immigration and the direction overall. There is already a strenuous process in place, and the new proposals do beg the question of what the intention really is here, given that people on the existing 10-year routes have to apply for every 2.5 years until they complete 10 years of leave and are eligible for ILR in the first place. I do just want to, in the time that I have, just mention that there was one survey undertaken in 2023 by the Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit, the IPPR and Praxis, who said that 40% of those in work on the 10-year route were employed in health and social care settings, including as carers, nurses and cleaners. And this is to be of no surprise to many of us, given the history of migration in the UK from the Windrush generation to skilled workforces arriving in the immigration wave, including in the 1970s, like in my area. And the top 5 nationalities of applicants on these routes between 2016 and 2020 being from Nigeria, Pakistan, India, Ghana and Bangladesh, according to the International Migration Observatory's analysis of Home Office data. So I'm afraid to say it's no surprise, but it's no coincidence that in the recent period, in recent years, we've seen Black, Asian and minority ethnic people and women disproportionately suffer through the pandemic in terms of deaths, workplace rights and hardship. And of course that includes workers in health and social care settings. The pandemic laid bare these structures of inequality and discrimination. And we have to be very, very careful about the changes proposed to the ILR route for these reasons as well. I will, just before I conclude, just say that petitions are quite right to point out that the skilled worker route is the main UK work visa route, and that includes the health and care worker subcategory for NHS staff. And just to conclude, Mr. Chair, what we know of the proposed measures in the Immigration White Paper is that they appear to be punitive. The wide-ranging evidence suggests that the long pathways are detrimental to individuals and communities. No one should really be subject to them. And rather than exemptions for some and not for others, we need a thorough overhaul of settlement and citizenship pathways so that people can settle in the UK in both a timely and an affordable way. People do need to feel a sense of belonging and be able to fulfil their potential. And I fear that the proposals that are being put forward will undermine the resilience of our communities. Putting more people on these routes and extending the routes will multiply the effects that are already being had in our communities. And I will just end by saying in the East End of London, we have a proud history of welcoming people from all parts of the world, from all walks of life, whether it be from Europe or Bangladesh, Somalia or even Hong Kong, because we know we are better for it. And I think that we need to really take a hard look at ourselves as to the proposals being put forward in the Immigration White Paper and change our direction. Thank you.
I can't see. Rachel Blake, I can't see if you're still standing or not. Not. You are. Good. Rachel Blake.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Can I thank the Petitions Committee for bringing forward this important debate, and I welcome the spirit of this debate so far in terms of recognising the original overall purposes of the debate and the topic about this indefinite leave to remain, and also the spirit to rise above the appalling the appalling divisive rhetoric that has come forward recently in terms of the role of migration and the lives of asylum seekers. My constituency, the cities of London and Westminster, has a long track record of welcoming migrants and refugees. The historic neighbourhoods of the City of London, Soho, Fitzrovia and Pimlico are just some of the villages in the very centre of London that have a long track record of welcoming people and continue to be proud of their diverse heritage. And indeed, our country prides itself on fairness and stability in our approach to the law and in our approach to migration and asylum policy. We are a place that people come to build and rebuild their lives, and also a place that people come and invest in their own futures. And I think that we're all richer for it. I'll give way.
On behalf of the Petitions Committee, can I thank the Honourable Member for her thanks to the Petitions Committee. Far away from London, in the Highlands of Scotland, it's the same. We have refugees who fitted in and been greatly welcomed. Can I make the point to the Minister that involving the devolved institutions such as the Scottish Government, the Welsh Assembly, the Northern Irish Assembly is hugely important if we're going to make all this work?
I thank the Honourable Member for that contribution. I want to focus my remarks particularly on those who have BNO visas, and I want to particularly focus on the importance of stability in that system. I first became particularly interested in the lives of people living in Hong Kong because of my constituent, Jimmy Lai, who is currently interred in Hong Kong because of him standing up for freedom and democracy. And this has brought me to be profoundly concerned about the importance of the BNO visas. While it is absolutely right that we should be discussing how we appropriately balance the many benefits of migration with the concerns that some people have had about the current system, I do think that it's important that we have stability in the system and recognise that already high bars there are in terms of securing indefinite leave to remain. And I'll be focusing very closely on the proposals that the Home Office is bringing out in this particular area to make sure that we are standing by those principles, those values of fairness and stability. I'll give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and she's making an excellent speech. I wonder if she'd allow me to gently register a concern on behalf of, in particular, those from Hong Kong who live in Harrow. Many of whom are making a very significant contribution to our community and are genuinely worried about these proposals too.
I thank my honourable friend for making those remarks about his constituents in Harrow and the concerns that they have on this particular area. So I will just conclude by saying that the areas that I will really be focusing on in any forthcoming consultation is sticking to those values of fairness and stability in terms of the already high bar for those seeking indefinite leave to remain that came to this country expecting to be complying with particular rules and will be going forward with their applications in the very near future. Thank you.
Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Chairmanship. Can I congratulate the member for South Norfolk for his excellent opening remarks? Can I also welcome the Minister to his role, and I hope he's enjoying his first day in the job.
Yes.
Like many people here, I've heard from my constituents in Richmond Park their very grave concerns about what the immigration white paper will mean for them. And in particular, the intention to reform the indefinite leave to remain qualifying period without giving any specific details surrounding the changes and the exemptions. The lack of detail on such an important issue has led to great uncertainty and distress for many UK residents, including many of my constituents in Richmond Park, where we have been pleased to welcome over the last few years many new residents from Hong Kong in particular.
Would she give way?
Happy to give way.
I'm very, very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. She rightly says the lack of clarity is harmful. It's cruel to people who thought they were on one path and now are not. But it's also counterproductive, because we may end up losing really talented people working in my patch and in hers as well. We also undermine employers who don't quite know what game they're playing. So all of this is hugely counterproductive to our economy, as well as simply not being fair.
I thank my honourable friend for making that point. He's exactly right. This isn't just about the residents themselves. It's also about their employers, the places that they work, and the wider economy. But my residents in Richmond Park are rightfully concerned about how these changes could affect their lives, the lives of their children, and their employment in the UK. The B&O visa is not a transactional visa. It is a moral commitment which the UK offered in response to the national security law and the dismantling of promised freedoms in Hong Kong. So I am deeply concerned about the government's decision to extend the route to indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10 years. In particular, that this lack of clarity over the B&O visa in the midst of increasing evidence of transnational repression from China and the looming planning decision on the Chinese mega embassy, it's concerning to me and to many of my constituents who could be affected by this change. The government must do better to provide assurance for the hundreds of thousands of B&O visa holders across the country, and this starts by giving them clarity over their immigration status and how this year's immigration white paper will affect them. I'm happy to give way.
Thank you, Member, for giving way. She makes an excellent point about this being a part of a promise that we made to the people of Hong Kong. And when this route was introduced, the Chinese Communist Party warned those B&O applicants they should not trust in Britain. And if we change the goalposts in the way that we are proposing to do so now, we may in fact be having a huge propaganda victory to that government. Does she agree with me that that would be a big mistake?
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I know he also in Carshalton and Wallington has many residents from Hong Kong, and I really hope that the Minister will take on board the point that we're making about the moral duty that we owe to these people, particularly in the light of increased oppression from China. But similarly, as my other honourable friend earlier pointed out, the skilled worker visa route has worked to offer a secure pathway for world-leading talent to join the UK's workforce. In coming to the UK, these skilled workers have brought value to the economy, to key sectors like the care sector and to their communities. And that's why the government's failure to give the detail on changes to the indefinite leave to remain qualifying period is so concerning. It not only risks upending the lives of so many residents and families, it also risks damaging our businesses and the economy. A skilled, stable workforce is a key part of any growing business, and recent government policy has already begun eroding the availability of this workforce in the UK. National insurance contributions have disincentivised hiring. Red tape with the EU has made it more difficult to hire skilled workers from abroad. The creation of Skills England risks failing in its aim to upskill the British labour force if the body is not given the independence it needs. Now, on top of all of this, the government's white paper has added uncertainty for businesses looking to hire employees, adding yet another barrier to growth. And that's why the government must provide clarity on the skilled worker visa as a matter of urgency. Many B&O visa holders have built their lives here in the UK, and they've made huge contributions to our economies and our local communities, especially in my constituency of Richmond Park. They've bought homes, they've started businesses, they've enrolled their children in schools. So I urge the government to offer more clarity on their plans for the 5-year qualifying period for those already on specific visa routes, and I also ask the Minister if they will confirm their commitment and honour their original commitment to protect these agreements. Thank you, Sir Jeremy.
David Pinto-Dushinsky.
Thank you, Sir Jeremy. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I also want to join my colleague in thanking the Petitions Committee for securing this debate. I also want to thank Mr Lee for instigating the petition. I'm here to speak about the issue of the B&O visa. Sir Jeremy, our debate today should have two starting points. First, an acknowledgement of the historic commitment the UK made to the people of Hong Kong in the form of the B&O scheme. It's something we should be intensely proud of. Secondly, a recognition of the massive repression we've seen in Hong Kong, in particular since the enactment of the national security law. Rights that were guaranteed to the people of Hong Kong by the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration have been cast aside. Hong Kong's democracy's been replaced by a dictatorship, and its free press has been crushed. This is the context that has left many Hong Kongers feeling that they have little choice but to leave, to seek freedom and a new life here in the UK. I am proud that many people... yes.
friend for giving way. Do you think also in this context we should be clear, when we say BNO, it actually stands for British National Overseas. We are not talking about Hong Kongers or Chinese. We are literally talking about people we recognise as British national overseas because of our historic relationship. And do you think we should be a lot clearer about that in how we treat them within our immigration system?
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for that excellent point. She's, of course, right. And I am proud that we've welcomed many people who have that BNO status, who have that British overseas status, to my constituency in Hendon, particularly in Colindale. Our growing and vibrant community adds immeasurably to the life of our area. I've talked to many BNO holders who have come into the UK to start a new life. They are absolutely committed to our country for the long term. They are keen to put down roots. They are planning their working lives, their children's educations, their retirements here. But that is why the issue of the 5-year ILR timeframe is so important to them. Without ILR, BNO holders cannot get home fee arrangements at university for their children or access their pension savings from their mandatory Provident Fund accounts. I've talked to many families who this is affecting directly and profoundly, leaving them in great financial difficulty. Moreover, without ILR, they cannot begin the path to full UK citizenship. When they applied for their BNO status starting in 2021, they did so on the basis of a 5-year ILR period. Extending the ILR period for them will potentially create great uncertainty and hardship. The government is absolutely right to tighten the rules on migration to address the appalling failures of the previous government, and the measures laid out in the recent migration white paper will make an important and welcome difference, and I fully support them. Yet, it is still worth considering the obligation we have to some groups in making this important change. Yes, absolutely.
Characteristically, he sets out eloquently some of the major uncertainties that are currently facing BNO holders. Considering that BNO applicants now make up less than 2% of visa applications, does he agree with me that the immense contribution they make to communities like mine in Altrincham and Sale West and communities like his, and some of the uncertainties they're facing, means that this policy has big costs and in reality minimal rewards as the government seeks to cut migration?
I thank the honourable member for his point, and it is of course right that this is a source of great concern to many people. But look, this is why I welcome the government's and the minister's willingness to listen and decision to consult on the measures in the white paper, including this issue. Ensuring we retain the 5-year ILR period for BNO holders who already have settled here would be a strong reaffirmation of the solemn compact we have made with the people of Hong Kong, and I believe it need not have huge ramifications, exactly to the member's point, for the broader migration system, especially because I believe BNO holders constitute a unique case due to their special status. It would give certainty to almost 200,000 BNO passport holders who have made the UK their home. It would be a beacon of British leadership. I hope we can find a way to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Pippa Hayles.
Serve under your chairship, and I congratulate as well the member for South Norfolk, and also congratulations to those who successfully brought this petition forward. And I rise today, as many, in support of the petition calling for Hong Kong British National Overseas visa holders to retain their indefinite leave to remain settlement. You know, as we know, those visas are a lifeline. As we've heard, a moral commitment created in response to Beijing's crackdown on human rights and democracies. But it's the families who made life-changing decisions, leaving their homes, relatives, friends, on the understanding that if they worked hard, paid their way, built their lives here, contributed, they could settle permanently after 5 years. To move the goalposts now retrospectively would not only cause distress, it would be betrayal of the values, of everything they think we stand for and we hope we stand for, which is we keep our word. Yeah. Chair, I have so many wonderful examples of many Hong Kongers in my constituency of South Cambridgeshire. And for example, 2 of whom one constituency wrote to me about, who've become invaluable to their community in Cherry Hinton. They help run toddler groups, holiday clubs for over 180 children, supporting families who speak little English. They're law-abiding, hard-working, deeply committed to their community. And yet they now live in fear that the rules will change midway, leaving their futures here uncertain. And I see no reason why those already here, already contributing, should be thrown into this level of anxiety. To delay their right to settlement would upend carefully prepared plans, heap financial pressure on families already struggling with the cost of living, and deny children who have grown up here their right to home fee tuition fees at university. Also, I'll give way.
As well as those anxieties, financial and educational, many Hong Kongers are under threats of transnational repression, as the Joint Committee on Human Rights report recently shown, including having bounties on their heads, some of whom do not have permanent status here. Is it not the case that we are putting anxiety on people who may be at risk of harm if they cannot stay here any longer?
Yes, and the Honourable Member makes a really, really important point, which, delaying their settled status would leave many of these people unprotected when travelling abroad and raise their stakes in terms of their own security and that of their families. And many families are already financially stretched. This is often exacerbated, as we have heard, by the BNO visa holders being blocked from accessing their pension savings with the National Provident Fund. With settled status, that would no longer be the case. And they've said to me, that would be best for everybody because they would then be contributing. They do not want to be a burden on the public purse. But we must never, as my honourable friend has said, never forget what's at stake. In Hong Kong, nearly 1,000 political prisoners remain behind bars for daring to exercise their democratic rights. And it's neither safe nor realistic for Hong Kongers to return. Chair, the petition before us is clear and just. It calls on us to stand by the word we gave and allow these people the BNO visa to settle after 5 years, not 10. So I urge the Government and the Minister to provide the clarity, the reassurance and exempt those already here on BNO visas from these reforms. Thank you.
Annie Beales.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's an honour to serve under your chairship. I think the vast majority of us want to see a more balanced and more managed migration system built on the principles of contribution and on fairness. And that's certainly what I hear from my constituents from all walks of life in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. But the question is, how do we get there? How do we get to a more managed level in a fair and a just way? And I think my constituents also have concerns that the two matters that we're debating today do not meet that fairness test. I've heard from many constituents deeply concerned about what these proposals might mean for them in terms of the extension of the indefinite leave to remain to 10 years, and particularly the retrospective nature of the application. Many have come to this country in good faith under the current system, have planned their lives on the assumption of the current system being in force. Many skilled people from right across the world face the choice of where to be a nurse, where to come, where to start a business and contribute. And I'm concerned that applying the 10-year qualifying period retrospectively to those already who live in the UK and made that decision a long time ago now would not be fair and would be deeply disruptive to their lives. I'm also not convinced that the retrospective nature would have any effect on the current levels of migration in this country. And secondly, the blanket policy, regardless of circumstance, of contribution, of needs, may also have significant and adverse equalities impacts that I hope the Government will consider. And I'd encourage the Government to think carefully and deeply about the implications of this decision on a variety of contexts, and particularly vulnerable migrants such as children and the elderly. One of my constituents wrote to me just today to raise an issue of the impact on child migrants and accessibility of university education. Without ILR, prospective students would have to pay full international fees, which are extortionate. And if this change comes to place, a child moving to this country at 10 years old who graduates having completed secondary school education throughout their time in the UK would not qualify for UK-based fees for higher education, would have to wait potentially a number of years further, delay their education or potentially put it off completely. The individual who contacted me, I actually happened to also meet last week with her mother, who's a neonatal care nurse at Hillingdon Hospital. Her mother and father have always worked, have paid taxes in the UK, contributed, active in the community. And this is the case for so many of my constituents who now call the UK home and keep our public services running. As we seek to grow our economy, is it really those who want to study engineering, maths, law, and those who want to work or study in the NHS to set up a business who we wish to see restricted as denies opportunities to get educated, to put down longer-term roots, and to contribute further to our nation's future? I'd implore the Government to reflect deeply on the ILR changes and not to adopt a blanket approach, instead to create a system which encourages contribution, encourages community activity, encourages people to work in our public services, to support education and skills being added to our communities, not taken away. I'd also concur and agree with colleagues here today who've talked about our responsibilities to B&O visa holders. I'm very proud to represent many B&O visa holders in Hillingdon, and in particular Uxbridge and South Rice at the seat I represent. One told me recently that this was a key pathway and crucial for their safety and providing hope to many of us in the community following the implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, which has severely undermined our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, protest and of free press. Many again have made the UK their home, not through an easy choice to make, but due to life-changing decisions and circumstances. And we're hoping that after 5 years of residence, meeting the quite strenuous requirements around English requirements, around the Life in the UK test, they would have the chance to apply for indefinite leave to remain and 1 year later of citizenship. And I'd encourage the Minister to carefully consider the cases of those with B&O visas. Sir Jeremy, we can and we must reduce migration levels to a sustainable level. We can restore public confidence and ensure that the system is managed well, but we can also ensure that the system is fair, that it is just, that it encourages migration that works for our country and a system that works for people who come here and call our country home. Many of my constituents at the moment are deeply worried about the narrative that's taking place in Hillingdon and also nationally, which is seeking to divide communities to other members of our community. And I think at this time particularly we must stand together, we must celebrate our diversity and encourage people to reflect on the importance of difference to a successful and sustainable economy, society and country. And I hope as we reform our migration system, we won't forget this. We'll design reforms that work for our country, but also work for those who call our country home. Thank you.
Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in today's debate and to stand alongside colleagues in defence of a promise that we made to the people of Hong Kong. Carshalton and Wallington is home to many Hong Kongers, situated in the London borough of Sutton, which has become a bit of a go-to location for new arrivals, with over 5,000 now living in our area. And it's no surprise that many of those local residents signed this petition. They know firsthand what's at stake. They took risks to be here, they've built their lives here, they've contributed to our community, and they've trusted the UK to be a safe haven. And we owe it to them to secure their future. Now, the B&O visa scheme was introduced in response to the imposition of the National Security Law in Hong Kong, a law that essentially criminalised dissent against the Chinese Communist Party. And this visa is a lifeline, rooted in the special and enduring ties between our two nations. And it also offered a clear pathway, 5 years to indefinite leave to remain, then citizenship. I'll gladly give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman giving way, and like him, I've a significant Hong Kong population in my constituency of Solihull Western Shirley. There's about 4,500 across the borough. And does he agree with me they had a legitimate expectation that the rules of the game wouldn't be changed partway through, and to do so would damage the social contract we as a state have had with these people?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. He makes an excellent point. I think it is a moral duty for our country to maintain its promise to those people. As I was saying, to now consider extending that to 10 years would be a betrayal of trust. And this change will have damaging consequences. Young Hong Kongers would face a decade-long wait to access university at home fee rates. Families would be locked out of £3 billion worth of retirement savings, unable to access at the moment due to the restrictions placed in Hong Kong. Many would be immobilised, unable to travel safely without risking contact with Chinese consulates, and children born here would have to wait until the age of 11 to gain a passport. And all of this would play directly into the hands of the Chinese government, who have long claimed that B&O holders misplaced their trust in Britain. Changing the rules now would hand them a huge propaganda victory. Now, we've had constituents on B&O visas write to me describing how the limbo of waiting for indefinite leave to remain makes it difficult to continue their education or apply for the jobs that they want. Others have shared how they are being harassed or surveyed, even here in the UK, simply for speaking out or being politically active. And this is about safety. The Hong Kong diaspora in the UK faces transnational repression, a term that's no longer abstract. In recent months, we've seen surveillance and intimidation of activists, bounties placed on UK residents, physical attacks, including the assault of a protester at the Manchester consulate, and attempts to break into the homes of exiled Hong Kongers. These are no longer isolated incidents. They are part of a systemic campaign, and the UK must respond with clarity and courage. In our borough of Sutton, I've heard personal stories of fear, resilience, and hope. Hong Kongers have opened businesses, joined our schools, and enriched our community. We must not, bureaucracy or short-term politics, undermine the commitment that was made in good faith. We must stand by Hong Kongers, guarantee their rights, and secure their futures in a way that we promised.
Yeah. James Nash.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today and to speak as the Member of Parliament for Rushcliffe, which is proudly home to over 2,000 Hong Kongers who have arrived under the BNO visa scheme, and it's that I would specifically like to focus on today. I thank my honourable friend from South Norfolk for opening this debate, and I also welcome my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham North and Kimberley, to his place as Minister of State in the Home Office, and thank him for joining us today on his first working day in office. I'm here this evening or this afternoon to make a simple, principled case. The 5-year pathway to settlement for BNO Hong Kongers must be retained. This is about trust as much as law, about keeping our promises and about keeping the faith of the people who place their futures in our hands. The BNO visa route was created as a humanitarian lifeline in response to Beijing's horrific national security law. The route is grounded in our legal, moral and historic responsibilities under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. It is not an economic channel, but a bespoke, safe and legal route for British nationals and their relatives who are fleeing repression in a former British territory where rule of law and human rights have been ruthlessly eroded. That is why there has been rare, enduring, cross-party support for this scheme since day one, and why any attempt to move the goalposts now would cut against the very reason that the route exists. Hong Kongers uprooted their families on the explicit promise of 5 years to indefinite leave to remain, plus 1 year to citizenship pathway. To lengthen the timeline mid-journey would be seen as a breach of trust. It would shake confidence in the UK's credibility far beyond the BNO community. The numbers tell their own story. Almost 200,000 BNO Hong Kongers now live in the UK. Crucially, the overwhelming majority came in the first 2 years after launch, and BNO now grants now account for about 1% of total visas. We must appreciate that today's debate isn't about headline immigration numbers, but about the welfare of a community that is already here. In my constituency of Rushcliffe, as I said earlier, over 2,000 Hong Kongers are currently on their 5-year pathway to ILR. The impact will be on them. Shifting the rules, as has already been mentioned, would hand Beijing and their regime in Hong Kong a propaganda gift. You trusted Britain, yet Britain broke the deal. We cannot allow that narrative to stand, which is why the government must keep its promises. Extending settlement to 10 years would force a decade-long wait for home fee status for BNO students, pricing out the vast majority of BNOs currently studying for their A-levels at schools in my constituency from being able to start university until they're in their mid-20s. It would delay access to an estimated £3 billion in Hong Kong pension savings that can only be released once ILR is granted. This is £3 billion. I will.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. He's making an excellent case around what those with BNO visas are being put through by this white paper and the proposed legislation. In Dartford, I've been contacted by a very large number of people on skilled visas who are in a very similar situation. Would he agree with me that whatever the situation of people either on BNO or skilled visas, whatever may happen in the future with this legislation, that people who have come to the UK to contribute to our economy and society, that the least we should offer them is clarity on what they can expect from us, as well as fairness in not changing the terms on which they were accepted here in the first place?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and he's absolutely right. And I think the consensus here today is that that uncertainty and the idea of moving goalposts is something that we need to determine whether we support as a country. And I sincerely hope the Minister is listening about the sentiment in the room. Going back to BNOs, because many BNOs lack consular protection and cannot safely renew travel documents, a longer route would also trap families separated, unable to travel for study, unable to travel for work, and unable to see relatives abroad. To extend the pathway to 10 years would not be an act of administrative tidying, rather it would be a material downgrading of hundreds of thousands of British Hong Kongers' lives across the UK. Meanwhile, the community is contributing civically and economically. Hong Kongers are working, studying, volunteering, starting businesses, even serving in local government as councillors. They are precisely the neighbours and colleagues we want to keep, that my constituents in Rushcliffe want to keep, and many of those are also concerned about some of the broader immigration issues that have been referenced. The 5-year route was designed so they could put down roots quickly and securely. Extending the clock would defer integration, depress opportunity and waste potential. And therefore, to close, I echo the words of the tens of thousands of UK Hong Kongers who will be watching this debate at home. I want them to keep standing with Hong Kong. I want to keep our promise to Hong Kongers. I want to keep the 5-year route. That is how we honour our word. We support a thriving community that has so much to offer to our nation, and it's a way that we can show the world that when Britain gives its word, it will keep it.
Thank you. Before I call the next speaker, just a gentle reminder, 4 minutes is what we're aiming for. I won't impose a formal time limit unless I have to, but if we could keep close to 4 minutes, that would help. Chris Curtis.
Thank you, It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I won't speak for too long, so I hopefully bring down that average time that you're aiming for, given I think most of the key important points of this debate have already been made by many of the previous speakers. I'd also like to thank the Petitions Committee for bringing this forward and for the opening speech by the member for South Norfolk. But I do think it is important to add my voice to the many voices that we've heard today in terms of the concerns about the changes to the deal around the BNO visas, particularly when it comes to the timelines on the indefinite leave to remain. I've got emails from many constituents across Milton Keynes, and I see my honourable friend from Milton Keynes Central in here as well, who I know has had many more. And I recently met with Yvonne from 852 CIC, a fantastic organisation in Milton Keynes, which represents and looks to integrate Hong Kongers into the community in Milton Keynes, who have shared their concerns with me about the changes which they fear may be coming under the immigration white paper. Of course, yes.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Would he agree with me that the contribution of the Hong Kong community to Milton Keynes and to our diversity and to our strength as an economic powerhouse within the UK should not go unseen by the Minister and this government? And the reality is we made them a promise and we should keep it.
I completely agree with the comments just made there. Diversity is at the heart of Milton Keynes, and we're a proud city that shows how people from many backgrounds can come together to enrich and strengthen our community. And we've seen firsthand in our city how the many people who have come to our city from Hong Kong have added to our local economy. And this government, the previous government and this government made a deal. We made a commitment that was in keeping with our human rights commitments and our commitment to do the right thing. And it is I think, important that we keep to that commitment. Now, most people, I think, I welcome the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary's commitment to ensuring that those who come to Britain are able to integrate and contribute to our society, not simply to fill up gaps left by uncertainty and investment and skills and training, but changing the situation, changing the deal for the BNO visas is not the way of doing that. Now, I don't think that the government intentionally aimed to create this uncertainty for people who came here, But unfortunately, that uncertainty has now been created, and we see that in the inboxes of everybody sitting around this room. So I hope today the Minister will be able to clarify the situation and be able to give certainty that those who came here seeking safety, freedom and opportunity know that this government still stands with them, will not change the rules, and that 5-year journey that was committed by the previous government will remain in place even after the immigration white paper goes through. Thank you.
The honourable gentleman is as good as his word. Sarah Hall.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Over recent years, many Hong Kong families made the brave decision to uproot their lives and move halfway around the world to Britain. They came here on the strength of our word, a clear promise that if they held BNO status, they would have a route to settle and be able to build a future. In Warrington South, I've had more than 2,400 residents sign this petition, the highest number anywhere in the country. That tells me just how deeply this issue matters to the people I represent. It matters because those arriving from Hong Kong are no longer just headlines or statistics. They are our neighbours. They are parents at the school gate, new business owners on our high streets, and young people starting out in education and work. I think of Rose and Wilson, who moved to Great Sankey to give their children a simpler and less pressured life, or Renata, who set up a play cafe near Bridgefoot, or Cheryl, who started a bakery on Buttermarket Street, or Taki and the wonderful team at Warrington Hong Kongers, who have created a supportive resource for Warrington Hong Kongers arriving locally. And finally, of Oscar, a young man who spent time in my office on work experience, showing that this new generation are already part of the fabric of Warrington. They are here because Britain offered sanctuary when freedoms in Hong Kong were stripped away. We responded with the BNO visa route because it was the right thing to do. To row back now or to create uncertainty about people's status would not just harm families who have already sold their homes, invested their savings and enrolled their children in British schools. It would damage Britain's credibility. Our word must mean something. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Fairness, yes, sorry.
I thank the honourable friend for giving way. Her stories remind me of stories that I hear in Reading, in my constituency of Early and Woodley, such as Angie, who's a nursing associate in the NHS. Angie's daughter wishes to study paramedical science and also work in the NHS, but for that to happen, she needs a route to settlement in order to pay home student fees. Does my honourable friend agree with me that families like Angie's need certainty and stability from the Minister and from our government?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. Thank you. Fairness and the rule of law cut both ways. Families played by the rules, paid the fees and came here legally. They have every right to expect that the path to settlement and citizenship remains exactly as set out. In Warrington, I see every day how Hong Kongers contribute to our economy, our schools and our community life. They came because they believe in the same values we do: fairness, freedom, dignity and democracy. I know colleagues across the House share a cross-party pride in the BNO scheme. It said something good about who we are and what we are willing to stand up for. Let's not unpick that. Let's fix what needs fixing in our border system without unravelling a promise that families have bet their lives on. I see the contribution Hong Kongers make every day to Warrington South. What they need now is reassurance and not uncertainty. We must keep the 5+1 route intact for Hong Kongers, and in doing so, show that Britain is a country whose promises can be trusted and whose government stands by those who put their faith in us.
Chairship. When the government's immigration white paper was published with this proposal to increase the qualifying period for indefinite leave, I received numerous emails from constituents in Truro and Falmouth who could be affected. My constituency is home to Cornwall's only large acute hospital, so many of the constituents concerned work in the health service. They're doctors, nurses and dentists. According to the BMA, the NHS in England had a shortage of 12,000 hospital doctors, more than 50,000 nurses and midwives in 22. Cornwall has a super ageing population with complex health needs, and we struggle to attract medical professionals, and sometimes as a result of our housing crisis they can't find anywhere to live, and we really don't want to lose some of those highly skilled medical professionals who are trying to make Cornwall their home. They stress their commitment to their jobs, the way they've worked tirelessly on the front line during COVID, the ways in which they've served and contributed to their communities and the taxes that they've paid. Many have children attending school in Cornwall and very concerned about disruption to their education, and some had partners who were Cornish. Dr. Mohamed Abdalazim, who works at RCH in Trelisk, said 10 years is an extraordinarily long time to live on a visa without the security of citizenship, the right to vote, or the ability to fully settle and plan our futures in the UK. The government hasn't yet confirmed whether people already in the immigration routes affected will have to wait longer for settlement, as opposed to the change only applying to those arriving after the implementation date, although the White Paper's annex does suggest that the change will affect those already here. Many MPs, including myself, have been asking questions on this issue, but the responses so far from written parliamentary questions have said it will be addressed as part of the consultation process, but without giving that timeline. An idea of that timeline and the parameters of the consultation would be extremely helpful to give my worried constituents some sort of idea on how long they have to plan for their future and what representations they can make. For now, they are, as one constituent wrote, trusting the UK's commitment to fairness and stability for migrants who invest their lives here.
Juliette Campbell.
Thank you, Jeremy, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairship today. I thank the Pensions Committee for securing this debate today, and also to my honourable friend from South Norfolk for his opening remarks. I rise today to speak in support of retaining the 5-year pathway to ILR for BNO visa holders. My constituency of Broxtowe is home to over 2,500 BNO visa holders. Many of them have written to me and raised their concerns. I want to say today that our community has been culturally and socially enriched by having our Hong Kong residents, and they continue to make a valuable contribution to society. Research shows that 59% of BNO visa holders have a degree or a postgraduate degree. However, despite their skills and eagerness to settle in the UK, they face challenges to fully integrate, to settle, and feel secure here in the UK. Happy to give way.
I wondered if she agreed with me on that point, that employers have raised with me that increasing the qualifying period will actually make the UK less attractive to international talent, and that is particularly important for science and research in our universities.
I thank my honourable friend for her contribution, and absolutely I agree that it has an impact on how we can employ people within our communities. A report by the British Future organisation found that only about half of those people of working age are currently employed, and 47% of those working say that their current job status doesn't match their skills or qualifications. We know that this creates barriers to achieving full potential and impacts on individuals' self-esteem. On top of these challenges, BNO visa holders are facing heightened anxiety and uncertainty following the proposed changes in the Immigration White Paper. So while the government's proposals to regulate immigration systems is a good step forward, some of the proposed changes have led to the reduction in trust that was placed in the government by those from Hong Kong. My residents in Broxtowe acted in good faith and took the government at its word that they would have indefinite leave to remain after 5 years as part of their commitment to Hong Kongers who wanted to come to the UK. Extending the pathway from 5 to 10 years for indefinite leave to remain means that many are unable to access their retirement saving funds, which creates financial insecurity for many. And without ILR, my Hong Kong residents in Broxtowe cannot qualify for home fee status at UK universities, delaying academic opportunities. Delaying ILR will also lead to delays in acquiring citizenship, which will impact on the ability or the eligibility for consular protection, emergency foreign assistance, and could leave those affected at risk of transnational repression. I urge the government to retain the 5-year pathway for BNO visa holders who move to this country and move to the UK on that promise. It is fair and it is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Ben Coleman.
The debate. I understand why the government is proposing to extend the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain. I think we all recognise that immigration numbers are high, and this is a complex challenge. And it's a complex challenge not least because of Boris Johnson's failed Brexit deal, let us remember, a deal for which the leader of the Reform Party also bears great responsibility, and which because it opened the door to historically high levels of unskilled net migration. The leader of the Reform Party is as much to blame, in my view, as is the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Yes, I would happily.
Thank you. The leader of the Kent County Council asking the government to increase the visa for healthcare workers. Would the honourable member agree that there's a double standard? 1 minute they're asking to stop the immigration, and the second minute they're asking for more health workers to be brought from abroad?
I think it will come to no surprise to anybody who's ever dealt for more than 5 minutes with any member of the Reform political party to appreciate there are double standards involved. You only have to read what the leader of their party says one week and then says the next week to realise that their association, their commitment to maintaining a close relationship with the truth is a very weak commitment indeed. When we talk, going back to what I was saying, when we talk about the high levels of net immigration, we must not lose sight in all of this of the human impact of the proposals the government's brought forward, especially, as many people have recognised, on the people who have already built their lives here and who are net contributors to our economy and our communities. Since the publication of the White Paper in May, many residents in my constituency of Chelsea and Fulham have got in touch with me, and these are skilled workers, and their overwhelming feeling is simply of being blindsided. They came to the UK in good faith, they followed the rules, and now they're being told that these rules might change just before they become eligible to settle. And they also find it destabilising that almost 4 months since the publication of the White Paper, the government still hasn't given clear guidance on when the rules will come into effect, who will be affected, how it will work. And one couple told me how they moved from the United States in 2020, both work for global firms, both pay the top rate of tax, and they believed rightly that in April 2026, just down the road, they could apply for settlement. Now, they write to me, the rug has been pulled from beneath us. Their plans are suddenly on indefinite pause. And similarly, we have a young scientist in my constituency. She studied in the UK, works in clinical research, she's paid her international student fees, paid taxes, invested her savings here, and now she has no certainty still about her future. And then in my constituency, there's a local NHS speech therapist and her husband, a data scientist. They're expecting their first child. They told me that even if they're not caught out by the changes now, they have no faith, given the way this has been handled, that the system won't be changed again in the future. So, Jeremy, people can't plan their lives without basic certainty. So I'm hoping that the Minister today will be able to provide my residents with the clarity they need and tell us when the government plans to launch the consultation it promised. And the previous Home Secretary said that there was plenty of opportunity for people to comment on and consider the details of the proposals. I hope this will still be the case, and perhaps he can reassure us of that. And also, I'd like to understand whether the consultation will contain a clear and detailed definition of what the White Paper refers to as points-based contributions to the UK economy and society. Who exactly will be eligible for a shorter pathway to indefinite leave to remain? So, Jeremy, so many of my residents are literally counting the days until they become eligible for settlement. They deserve decent treatment, not 5 more years of waiting. So I look forward to the Minister's responses and to being able to offer my residents the much-needed reassurance to which I think we'll all agree they're entitled.
Ms Murray.
Can I draw the Chamber's attention to my declaration of interest and the support my office receives from RAM? I want to make a couple of points today, but I just want to pick up on the point that all honourable members have made, which is to recognise the enormous contribution that both these groups of migrants have made to British society, and nowhere is that more true than in my constituency of Edinburgh East and Musselburgh. As we're talking about indefinite leave to remain, I think it's important that we recognise that in this country, in the British immigration system, we don't really draw a distinction between indefinite leave to remain and citizenship. Almost all the main rights of migrants are accessed at the stage of indefinite leave to remain. But citizenship is important. Madeleine Albright was first a refugee in the UK before she was a refugee in America. And she commented that when she came to Britain, people said, "You're a refugee, you're welcome here, how long till you leave?" But in America, they said, "You're a refugee, you're welcome here, how long till you become a citizen?" And I think it's important that we reflect on whether the government should be agnostic about whether someone actually takes that step and becomes a citizenship, or becomes a citizen, or is it something we should incentivise and make meaningful? And I say that as well. One second point I would make is not only is the government agnostic on whether migrants become citizenship or stay with indefinite leave to remain, but it is impassive and uninterested, and this is an inherited system that we have, it is impassive and uninterested in the path that migrants take to get there. Now, some migrants make enormous contributions to our countries. They volunteer, they stand up for their communities, they pay taxes, they work hard, they follow the rules. Let's be honest, some don't. But the system is not very strenuous for them in distinguishing between them. As long as they wait long enough, pay a fee, and pass the Life in the UK test, which is pretty ridiculously bad, then they get ILR. We have precious few levers to influence behaviour, precious few opportunities to foster social cohesion and integration. Shouldn't we be thinking more creatively about that? Now, if we're going to have a distinction between indefinite leave to remain and citizenship, if the pathway is going to extend from 5 to 10 years, can't the government think more creatively about how we build a migration system that works for migrants and for the communities where they settle? A third point I would like to make is that the immigration system has to be realistic. About a couple of years ago, under the Conservative government, net migration came up at almost 1 million a year. What that means is that there's a big group of people who will soon become eligible for indefinite leave to remain. That means they become eligible for benefits and for social housing. Now, I hope in her remarks at the end of this debate, the Shadow Minister will accept responsibility and indeed apologise for the complete lack of grip that the Conservatives left on the immigration system. But we have to be realistic that there is a large group of people who will become eligible for benefits and social housing that is not actually currently available because they've not built it yet. Now, we have to address public concerns about immigration. People who support immigration understand that. So we need to be thinking more creatively about how the immigration system works. If we don't give people indefinite leave to remain, that means they don't become eligible for benefits. If we extend that period, that happens too. But can we think more creatively? And will the Minister look at taking steps to address some of the points that have been raised here today? For example, access to pensions, home fee status, difficulty travelling. These are things that can be addressed with those two groups, while still taking account of the reality of the system that we inherited from the Conservatives. My argument, therefore, is, if there is no substantive distinction between citizenship and indefinite leave to remain, if the challenge is that a large number of immigrants will become eligible for benefits and housing when they get indefinite leave to remain, if there is no mechanism to account for the contribution people make or to incentivise their integration into our communities, if the system is blunt, uncreative, impassive and rigid, and if we want people to actually take that step of becoming one of us and becoming a British citizen, then surely reform both of indefinite leave to remain and of citizenship is needed. Finally, I would just like to recognise the enormous contributions of both those unskilled worker visas and British nationals overseas. But I have a contention with the premise of this petition. Its implications for fairness and perceptions of fairness that some groups would get a carve-out based on the route on which they entered and not what they have done when they are here from the proposals. My view is that the system should look at the contributions migrants have made in the UK and not the visa that they came in on. So I asked the Minister if he could look with clarity, with the proper consultation, but with creativity and with a view to a migrant's contribution to the UK as we see the rollout of these proposals. Thank you.
Rebecca Long-Bailey.
For South Norfolk for his very poignant opening remarks. Now, the White Paper has caused huge fear amongst many of my constituents who work here. They've built lives here, families, friendships here. They pay tax towards our public services, volunteer and play a huge part within our local communities. Many of these workers came here to support our economy. They were invited by our UK businesses to fill key skills gap in defence, manufacturing, transport, aerospace, health, prisons and social care, to name just a few sectors. Now, the White Paper introduces preferential immigration routes for what it calls high-value contributors, including a shorter qualifying period for ILR and citizenship, but it fails to actually define what sectors or roles actually qualify. Nor has there been any impact assessment on the loss of these workers to each sector. Oxford Economics have found that in defence alone, in just one North West manufacturer, BAE Systems, each skilled migrant employee contributes over £84,000 per year to the UK economy. Moreover, as well as being economically valuable, they're integral to our national security and sovereign capability. So I'd ask the Minister if he could provide reassurance today and outline which sectors will indeed qualify as a high-value contributor and which sectors will be provided an exemption. The White Paper also fails to provide any transitional protections for current skilled migrants already working here on the 5-year skilled worker visa pathway to ILR. And this is causing anxiety to workers and businesses alike. So again, can the Minister reassure these workers today and confirm that there will be no attempt to make retrospective changes? Now, social care is another sector which would collapse without the support of skilled migrant labour. But it's a sector which has endemic low pay and exploitation. I've heard first-hand harrowing stories from workers who were brought here on skilled worker visas and have been threatened, exploited and frequently underpaid or not paid at all. But because they're reliant on visa support from their employer, they're often forced to keep silent about these abuses or face having their visa removed. So to protect them, in addition to the retention of the 5-year route to ILR and a commitment not to apply retrospective changes, can I also ask the Minister to consider sector-wide visa schemes in social care, enabling migrant workers to challenge bad employers without the threat of dismissal and removal? And indeed, this also extends beyond social care. There must also be greater protection for migrant workers in all sectors from exploitation and strengthening access to trade union rights. Now, finally, the second group of constituents that are most affected in Salford who've contacted me in great fear are those within the Hong Kong community. Salford's home to one of the largest Hong Konger communities in the UK, and I was proud to attend their community awards recently, which awarded members of the community for their efforts in doing good for the city of Salford, from litter picks to supporting those most in need. It was clear that all of these people were dedicated to giving back to the society and economy that embraced them. Many came as part of the BNO visa scheme set up in recognition of the UK's historic and moral commitments to the people of Hong Kong. Many were British citizens prior to 1997, and they maintained British nationality via the BNO passport. So the fear that is caused within this community, I'm sure the Minister will agree, is unnecessary. And I hope that today he can finally provide reassurance that the BNO visa scheme will be exempt from the changes proposed. And I hope he can provide much needed clarity and reassurance on the other points I've raised today. And welcome to his new position. I'm sure he's going to do fantastically. Thank you.
Steve Witherden.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir Jeremy. Indefinite leave to remain marks a defining moment for individuals seeking to make Wales and the UK their permanent home. It grants the right to work, access to NHS healthcare and eligibility for the benefit system, enabling people to plan for their future, fully integrate and contribute meaningfully to our communities. The government's recent proposal to double the standard qualifying period from 5 to 10 years would have devastating consequences. A person on the route to settlement is already required to pay thousands of pounds every 30 months to renew their visa, in addition to the healthcare surcharge of over £1,000 per year. Doubling the qualifying period doubles these already extortionate costs, pushing individuals and families further into financial insecurity. The extension also prolongs the time families are forced to live with no recourse to public funds. Children in such households are significantly greater at risk of poverty and deep poverty, impacting their health and educational outcomes and creating long-term effects that will harm our society and economy for years to come. We've recently witnessed a rise in anti-migrant rhetoric and assaults on asylum accommodation, home to many families and children. At a time when far-right groups are exploiting fear, weaponising misinformation and stoking division, our government should be pushing back firmly and proudly, not forcing some of the most vulnerable in our society to live in limbo for a decade. What we need are shorter, more affordable routes to settlement, not simply because it's the right thing to do, but because it strengthens our communities, supports our economy, and ensures children can grow up safe, secure, and with hope for the future. The proposals outlined in the White Paper directly undermine the government's own aims of tackling child poverty, raising living standards, and growing the economy. I urge the Minister to consult directly with those already on the 10-year route and to undertake a full equalities impact assessment before proceeding any further with these damaging proposals. Diolch yn fawr.
Dr. Rupa Hutt.
Thank you, Sir Jeremy. Some really brilliant points today. I want to concentrate on our universities. Imperial College, White City, UWL Ealing in my seat. The genuinely world-beating UK universities are. They generate billions of exports. They are central to UK soft power and global relationships. But almost everyone faces financial challenges. So they've had to diversify income streams to cross-subsidise their work, and attracting globally excellent researchers and international student fee income has helped them just about manage. Ex-colleagues of mine are closing down degrees reluctantly. Whole institutions face going bust. So with competitiveness and growth at the heart of the government's missions, if the UK makes it too onerous, our universities will lose talent and market share to Canada, Australia, the US. In fact, settler status is 5 years in most of the rest of Europe. So unwittingly, we are advantaging our rivals. At Imperial College's White City Innovation Incubator, I saw many international postgrads pioneering scientific and technological advances, some on the 2-year post-study work visa, which is also being cut. The UKHE sector's teaching, research and innovation activities benefit our economy to the tune of 265 billion, but 14 years of chronic underfunding, and now potentially another blow here, impacting our constituents, students, staff, and those young from lower income backgrounds who are always typically more debt averse will be put off entering HE at all. PwC found UK universities expect to increasingly rely on international student fees, and they're vulnerable to reductions in numbers, and that is pre-White Paper. In fact, this isn't just all hypothetical. In many cases, we're already seeing the UK's declining attractiveness. So 2024 Home Office figures show a 19% decline in student visas than the year before because of the rules to stop bringing family. Universities have a vital part to play in growth and productivity across the UK, but we could be sleepwalking into the perfect storm. Straitened circumstances, decreasing international competitiveness, increasing expenditure, putting universities under more and more pressure. So we do need to be honest about trade-offs involved in reducing immigration and of culture wars, when what I'm talking about is 1 million miles away from illegal boat migrants living it up in hotels and sapping resources from locals. So a skilled
talent pathway Hong Kong BNO person from Ealing who contacted me says of her circle, we have paid visa application fees, health surcharge, income tax, NI, roughly amounting to £60,000 per person over 5 years. Additional spending in the UK economy, rent, council tax, consumer purchases, education and childcare. Payments made in good faith under a policy we trusted would remain consistent for those already on the pathway. Sir Jeremy, in fact, Mark Pritchard, not Sir Jeremy anymore. Much of what is proposed in this white paper is welcome and sensible, but not moving the goalposts for those already in the system, not trashing solemn promises that we made to them. And linked to considerations of immigration and universities, we must put work, vocational education, further education provision, what universities are for, and their role in levelling up and all these sort of things. We need a realistic strategy for the long-term financial sustainability and their role in regeneration and growth. It's a graphic equaliser, really. So this is only a white paper. I hope ministers can take our points into account. Let's keep to our word, and let's keep the British higher education sector the envy of the world.
Dr. Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard, and it's a delight to serve Andrew today. And I do thank the member for South Norfolk for bringing forward, or for introducing this petition. And I want to thank all my constituents who signed it. And I do make my comments within the context of my register of financial interests. So I acknowledge the need to fix our broken immigration system, the one we inherited from the previous government. But we do have to do that in a way that focuses on measures that work, not make life difficult for all of us. So whether the changes to indefinite leave to remain will apply retrospectively is unclear, and I think that's what's at the core of what we're discussing today, with the government indicating that it may be retrospective. But legal precedent suggests retrospective application could be unlawful and it may well be challenged in court. Mr Chair, before I entered politics, I worked in higher education, and since the proposals around indefinite leave to remain were announced, former colleagues across our universities in Edinburgh have been in touch with me, concerned about both the impact on their current staff and also their ability to recruit new staff in the future. And I think, as the previous speaker made clear, if we're serious about growing our economy, we do have to support our universities as much as possible and ensure they're able to attract the best minds from around the world. And I would say gently to the Minister, he's sitting right next to me, so I can say very gently, is any other Western nation making it harder for their universities to attract the best minds from around the world? Of course they're not. And it's not just academics. I've also heard from many constituents, all of whom contribute to Edinburgh, who are deeply worried about these changes, what they would mean for them and their families and their futures. So I will share two stories to illustrate what I've heard. The first is from Sarah. Sarah came to Scotland from Canada in 2018 to study physiotherapy. She graduated during the pandemic, where she worked in hospital placements at the height of the crisis, facing, let's be honest, unknown risks. Since then, she has stayed and worked in our NHS, one of over 250,000 immigrants working in the NHS across the UK. She has treated patients in some of the toughest of circumstances imaginable. She talked about how she supported patients fighting for their lives in intensive care. Physiotherapy is on the shortage occupation list. I feel grateful that she's chosen to live in Edinburgh South West. But if these changes were to go ahead, our route to settlement would be pushed back until 2033. That means that for another 5 years, that means that she'll be faced with another 5 years of expensive visa renewals, which I've heard about, insecurity and uncertainty. And she was clear, if that happens, she may well think about leaving the UK and settling elsewhere. And that would be to the detriment of us all, particularly people waiting for physiotherapy. And this is not just an isolated case. We know that right across many industries in the UK, workers are facing this uncertainty. I was going to give a second example, Mr Chair, relating to Calvin, who's here on a BNO visa, but I think others have spoken better than I can about the impact on that group of residents in the UK. But I do say that I'm proud that so many people came from Hong Kong to live in my constituency, and I'm always humbled about the contribution they make, but I'm ashamed at what they're facing with regard to these proposals. But whether people are a Hong Kong family or a physiotherapist from Canada, we have to be serious about supporting people who contribute to our economy and our community. And settlement is about trust, it's about stability, and it's about fairness. Extending the pathway does not just damage individual lives, it damages our international credibility, our economy, and our ability to recruit the best staff. So I will just end by saying that I do welcome the Minister to his place. And I know that lots of ministers are at new desks today, and I do welcome that. But this is his chance to start his career with a big bang, to grab the headlines and really make a difference. So I look forward to hearing his response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Pritchard, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I want to welcome the Minister to his new department. A minister who I worked with in the past when he was DCLG, and he listened, and I got £20 million for Farnworth regeneration in Bolton South and Walkden. So I hope he's in a listening mood today as well. We all do. And, we'll do what we're asking him to do. It's an absolute privilege to speak in this debate on behalf of many families who've come to the United Kingdom either under the British National Overseas Visa Scheme or those who came on work permits to work in our country, often in areas which are difficult to recruit people. For example, the social care sector, with a very ageing population, those jobs are still unfilled, or this IT sector, and many other industries as well. On Friday, I met the Southend Hong Kongers group, and they explained to us about why many of them left Hong Kong, many fleeing from persecution. They've been working hard, as the Honourable Member for Salford earlier mentioned, and made great contribution to our economy. As, of course, those other people who have come as well, who are working in the social care sector, particularly where their jobs are not exactly the most nicest, and also where the pay often tend to be not great either. But they're working very hard, all of them. What they all have in common is that when they make the decision to come to the United Kingdom, they believed in certain fundamental rules, which was that after 5 years they will be able to apply for indefinite leave to remain. Of course, it wasn't guaranteed they would get indefinite leave because there are other things that you have to satisfy, such as having worked for 5 years, certain amount of pay, and of course of being good character. But at least they knew that that's what they were working towards. With the proposed changes, and we don't know what those changes are yet, I would urge the government and the minister to reconsider this for two reasons. A, it is manifestly unfair to change the rules relating to people who've come on the basis of what they understood the rules were. Retrospective legislation, to be honest, is always a bad legislation. It has been done occasionally, but it's normally done in state of immediate national emergencies. I don't think under any description this could fall within those categories. So I would say, for me, being British is actually knowing the laws, knowing the rules, and being able to abide by those. And these people, that's exactly what they've done. I'll give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. She mentions quite correctly the role of these wonderful people in terms of caring for the elderly. Let me give one example. I have cases in my constituency in the far north of Scotland where the care package has fallen through for the lack of care workers, and these poor old people have been readmitted to hospital. That is a disgrace, and precisely one of the arguments why I completely back what the Speaker is saying.
I thank the Chair of the Petitions Committee for that helpful intervention. And I just want to say, in honesty, what people are asking for, fairness. That's it. Simple fairness.
Sojan Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also congratulate my honourable friend, the member of South Norfolk, for his excellent speech and introducing this petition. I'm grateful to the 292 constituents of mine who signed the petition saying that any changes to indefinite leave to remain should not apply to those people who are already in the UK on a skilled worker visa. As we all know, the NHS is reliant on overseas workers. As of September 2023, around 20% of NHS England roles were filled by non-UK nationals. This includes 1 in 3 doctors and 3 in 10 nurses who are from overseas. In both the NHS and social care sector, the recruitment of overseas staff increased after the pandemic, with recruitment campaigns being run in places like Kerala in India. In 2022, 73,000 skilled worker visa applicants were sponsored in the health and care sector. While I support efforts to bring end to the long-term reliance on recruiting internationally to fill these roles, it is important to acknowledge the invaluable role that these skilled overseas workers play in our health and social care sector. As the co-chair of the APPG on adult social care and someone who came to this House from working in the NHS, I understand how important it is that we do not lose the skills of those who are already working in our health and social care sector. My constituents who are working in the NHS have made the point that the cost of recruiting and training an overseas nurse is anywhere between £50,000 and £60,000, while for a doctor it can be roughly £250,000. They argue that this country has made that investment so they are able to train, learn and work in our healthcare sector. However, they have said the certainty they had about their lives in the UK has been thrown into doubt, and they are currently not able to plan for the future. Turning to the other petition, I'm grateful to the 168 members of my constituency who signed the e-petition calling for Hong Kong British national overseas visa holders to be exempted from any change to the indefinite leave to remain. I'm particularly grateful to one of my constituents who came to a recent surgery with a letter signed by 80 Hong Kong BNO visa holders living in Ashford, Hawkinge villages. I know that those who are living in my constituency of Ashford are making a positive contribution to our community. Many of them have joined the workforce, finding employment in healthcare, in education, and in trades, with some opening their own businesses. They have enriched local towns and villages by volunteering and by becoming actively involved in local groups. And as most of them have young families, their children have joined and become settled on local schools. They have left Hong Kong due to the suppression of freedoms there and have come to the UK to rebuild their lives here. In their letter to me, my constituents wrote about the current uncertainty in their lives, especially for those with school-age children. They hope that the Minister's response to today's debate might go some way to giving them some clarity regarding their status. I look forward to my honourable friend, the Minister's response to the points that I and others have made in this debate.
MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I welcome the Minister to his place. And I would refer the House to my entry in the Register of Interest that relate to support from trade unions, as I wish to welcome the expression of concerns by unions at the TUC Congress this week, and of course migrant rights campaigners, and add my support to what they have said about the government's plan to double the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain for work visas, as well as an end to overseas recruitment in the NHS and social care for any role below degree level. I particularly wish to raise this matter today because I've been made aware that health staff in my own Middlesbrough and Thornaby East constituency at the James Cook University Hospital have faced acts of racist abuse in recent weeks. I wish to offer them my support, and I'm reaching out to the hospital CEO Stacey Hunter and to staff's unions. Unison has documented case after case of exploitation faced by migrant workers. Over 320,000 NHS staff are overseas workers, 20% of the workforce. In adult social care, around 20% of workers nationwide and up to 50% in London are migrants. Care workers tied to exploitative contracts, trapped in overcrowded housing and threatened with deportation if they dare to speak out. Some have even been forced to pay huge sums to take up jobs in this country, only to be told they must repay those fees if they challenge poor conditions. By binding visas to a single employer, the system hands unscrupulous bosses extraordinary power, and doubling the settlement period will only extend that power. Yeah. On migration, we have been following a dangerous script rather than setting out our own agenda. This is a mistake. It concedes the terrain of debate to malign political actors and their ilk, and it distracts from the real crises shaping people's lives.
Very grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. He's absolutely spot on. We are entering dangerous territory with some of the debate today. But can I say to him, I'm immensely encouraged that so many Labour MPs have turned up today to say something positive about immigration and the impacts and effects it has on our society, the positive effects. So will he join me and encourage them to go further, say good things about asylum seekers, stop stripping people of their human rights, and let's make sure a positive case for immigration and asylum is given in this House?
I'm grateful to the honourable member for his contribution. I think we've heard from speaker after speaker extolling the virtues of and the positive case for immigration. But of course it's not the immigrant minority who hold our social care services together who are the problem. It's the minority of those with extreme wealth who go to huge lengths to avoid paying their proper taxes, and they attend overseas conferences addressed by the leader of the Reform Party to learn how to collect multiple citizenships and avoid taxes through webs of multinational corporate arrangements. So the question here is, Mr. Pritchard, who are the patriots? The tax avoiders or the health workers? Yeah. So with so many thousands of workers short, the care sector is unable to provide care packages for all those who needing support, as has been mentioned by an honourable member just a few months ago. The government must get on with making its fair pay agreement in the health sector a reality and ensure social care is funded properly. That element of the Employment Rights Bill will be a great boon and fillip and support and protection for those workers. So I urge a retention of the 5-year route to ILR and a commitment not to apply any change retrospectively. And I urge a sector-wide visa scheme in social care enabling migrant workers to challenge bad employers without the threat of dismissal and removal. And I've been particularly concerned over reports that the government intends to apply the new policy on settlement retroactively to those already in the UK that had applied and continue to reside under old settlement rules. So I hope the Minister will clarify the position, because behind these rules are human lives. We owe these workers a debt of gratitude, not new barriers, insecurity and betrayal.
Bill Brickell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve in your chairship, Mr. Pritchard. May I thank my friend, the member for South Norfolk, for opening this debate. I wish to focus my remarks today on the issues of B&O visas, and may I declare an interest as a member of Labour Friends of Hong Kong. Now, 403 of my constituents in Bolton West signed the petition to keep 5-year ILR terms for Hong Kong British national overseas visa holders. What those 403 people are asking for is for us to keep faith with Hong Kongers who came here under certain promises, and their right to make that demand. To be clear, I back the government's immigration plan. We must reduce irregular migration, stop the dangerous small boats crossings, and build a fair system that works for the law-abiding majority. Bolton West backs secure borders. But my constituents also know that the BNO visa issue is different. That is a safe and legal route rooted in our history and reputation as a global leader in human rights and democracy. And when Beijing ripped up its promises to Hong Kong, this country stepped up. We told Hong Kong families, if you come here legally, play your part, integrate into your community and contribute for 5 years, you can make Britain your permanent home. That seems like a fair deal to me. So I'd like to take this moment to share a personal story from a constituent who wishes to remain anonymous. My constituent was a teacher in Hong Kong for more than 20 years, but new laws designed to crack down on criticism of the regime there meant that the genuine critical thinking my constituent was trying to impart to their students was no longer possible. So they took up the BNO visa in 2021 to start a new life, and it restored their freedom of speech, which is no longer possible in Hong Kong without fear of repercussion. I'm proud that my constituent, like many other Hong Kongers, chose Bolton West as their home. Many of my Hong Kong constituents have bought homes, sent their children to our schools, set up businesses and taken up jobs in the constituency. They're not here to take, they're here to give, to build and to belong. But when I speak to many of these families, it's clear to me that they live under a shadow. We've all read about activists in Britain like Carmen Lau, who now has $1 million bounty on her head from the Hong Kong authorities. Imagine trying to rebuild your life in Horwich, Lostock or West Horton while knowing you're being hunted by an authoritarian regime on the other side of the world. That is the reality of transnational repression. Transnational repression which takes other forms which we also need to get to grips with. Journalist Callum Muirhead has reported in This Is Money on how Hong Kong exiles here are being denied access to over £1 billion of their own pensions, as other members have mentioned already in this debate. And we know that in total, up to £3 billion of retirement savings are unable to be accessed until families secure indefinite leave to remain. That's money that could be spent in local shops, backing Bolton businesses, or put towards children's futures. The banks responsible for holding these pensions need to step up, do the right thing, and release those hard-earned pensions back to those who've earned them. To have to deal with all of this while your very right to stay in your home, school, and work is thrown into jeopardy is not fair whatsoever. And I'm particularly concerned about the impact these proposals would have on the lives of young Hong Kongers. Currently, under the 5-year pathway, students can qualify for home fees at university after settlement. Stretching it to 10 years would mean a whole generation facing prohibitively high international fees, which they simply haven't planned for. For families who've already sacrificed so much, their dreams would simply vanish. Now, we've heard the analogy about moving goalposts from a number of members already today. And if you will indulge me, Mr. Pritchard, I will mention it as well. I recently had the pleasure of hosting a number of my constituents from Hong Kong at a Bolton Wanderers match. For the record, the mighty Wanderers crushed Bristol Rovers 1-0. And even colleagues with limited knowledge of football will know that if someone had moved the goalposts at half-time during the game, it would have caused chaos. The same principle applies here. Hong Kongers quite rightly expect us to keep our word. And when we made this promise, we said to Hong Kongers, this is your lifeline, this is your chance. To change the rules at half-time would betray not just them, but the trust that underpins all immigration policy. So yes, in conclusion, let's get immigration under control. Let's smash the gangs. Let's back the government's plan to reduce irregular migration. But let's also keep faith with those who came here the way. So on behalf of my 403 constituents in Bolton West who signed this petition, I'd like to join colleagues in urging the government to exempt BNO Hong Kongers from any extension of the settlement period in its forthcoming immigration plan. Keep our promise, keep Britain's word.
Uma Kumaran.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and I congratulate the Minister today in the job sitting through such clinical speeches. Can I also thank my honourable friend, the member for South Norfolk, for leading this debate. I'm proud that people from all over the world have put down roots in Stratford and Bow. Some of those came here bringing their skills and experience, others came here seeking safe haven, but wherever they're from, they are welcome in Stratford and Bow.
The story of Stratford and Bow is a story that can be found in every corner of Britain, the very best of Britain, our humanity, our compassion, our fairness. It's a story that my own family know well. Fleeing pogroms and in search of safety, my parents were given refuge in the UK and they made East London their first home. That was nearly 50 years ago, and now they're proud British citizens. It's a story that I hear echoed by my B&O and Hong Kong constituents who came to the UK fleeing persecution. Since the publication of the government's immigration white paper, dozens of my constituents who are currently already on the pathway to settlement have written to me to share their stories and their concerns, specifically about transnational arrangements for those already in the UK, already on the 5-year route to indefinite leave to remain. This is one of my constituents' messages to me. Changing settlement requirements for those who are already in the UK risks a harmful message that even those who play by the rules are not guaranteed fairness. I was struck by how so many of those who wrote to me introduced themselves and described their families as hard-working, as law-abiding. They wanted to tell me about their incredible professions, from caring for our most vulnerable to driving innovation in the UK's tech sector, and about how much tax they're paying, how they contribute to the UK economy, how they've made this their home, how they've made Britain their home, and how about the community groups they volunteer with. While it was nice to read their emails to me, it also saddened me that we've reached a place in Britain where our neighbours, our constituents, those who came here legally, feel the need to defend that they belong here. But their stories also show me something else. Pride. Pride in participation in British life, pride in British values, in contributing to and playing their part in our national story. My constituent Chelsea wrote to share her pride in her own efforts to, in her words, uphold British values and integrate into British society. It's a pride that I know so many of us in this place know and share, a pride in contributing to our communities, in playing an active role in shaping local and national life. Another constituent wrote to me about bringing years of experience to work here in a highly specialised tech job. Declining offers in other countries, he told me he chose to come here following the rules in good faith, trusting the commitments made when he arrived and trusting that those would be honoured. In a nation obsessed with queuing and fair play, what could be more British than this? A respect for the rules, standing in line, asking for one thing in return, fairness. Changing settlement requirements for those who are already in the UK risks a harmful message, undermining trust in legal routes that even those who play by the rules are not guaranteed fairness in Britain. I will.
Thank you. Because over the summer I held a drop-in surgery for the Hong Kong community in Epsom and Ewell. There are over 1,000 of them. And I heard from so many concerned residents about the proposal to extend the qualifying period from 5 to 10 years. They told me that this could have a profound impact, including disrupting their financial planning, causing increased stress and uncertainty for those individuals and their families. Does the Honourable Member feel it's not imperative that this government provides urgent clarity and reassurance to those affected?
Thank you. My honourable friend makes an important point, and this is what so many of us in this room, cross-party, are asking for at the moment, and I'm sure the Minister will respond to that point. My B&O constituent put it best to me. British nationality is a privilege, not a right, and I'm sure all of those in this room agree with that. But it's also our right here as members to ensure that our system is fair. And that means we can't treat migration like a sticking plaster on deep-rooted domestic issues like skills shortages. It also means honouring the settlement expectations people had when we welcomed them here legally, and honouring our historic obligation to Hong Kongers claiming humanitarian protection and fleeing political repression. As the government prepares to set out its plans this autumn, I urge the Minister to consider the calls of constituents in Stratford and Bow and ensure that those who arrived under the 5-year rule are allowed to complete the route to settlement without changes being applied retroactively. To do so reflects the British values my constituents of all nationalities cherish and the story of our country, which is fair, outward-looking, compassionate, that we all hold so dear.
Mr. Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, and can I welcome the Minister to his place, and by way of ingratiating myself on behalf of my constituents, say how much I like his socks, which I've been admiring. The Immigration White Paper rightly recognises that we need an immigration system which is fair, firm and clear. Those who have come to this country to work hard, contribute and play by the rules should be able to see a well-defined route to citizenship. That pathway must be bound by rules which are consistent, transparent and well understood. That said, in Bracknell, I have heard from constituents who are potentially going to be affected by a shift from a 5+1 year to a 10+1 year route to citizenship. Many of these residents are almost at the 5-year point today and have already built lives and careers here. Understandably, they're worried that just as they reach that threshold, the rules will change beneath their feet. My firm view is that when people come to this country on the basis of a clear settlement route, we should respect that understanding. And at the very least, any change should be introduced in a staggered way. That is the fair and right thing to do. Importantly, this moment provides us with the opportunity to properly re-examine the individual components of our immigration system, and that includes the B&O visa scheme. When the Conservatives launched it, it was billed as a bespoke pathway that honoured our historic obligations to the people of Hong Kong. In reality, however, far too many B&O holders have found themselves bound by the same rules as other visas. That's not what was promised, and it does not reflect our historic commitment and the unique circumstances which brought Hong Kongers to our country. And here I'm afraid I do disagree with my honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh East. It does matter the route that people come to this country. The Hong Kong community is making a remarkable contribution to Britain. A 2023 survey found that 99% of B&O visa holders intend to settle permanently and become British citizens, and they're highly skilled. Almost 6 in 10 hold a degree or postgraduate qualification, compared to a third of the UK population. Yet despite this, only about half are currently in work, compared to 3/4 of the UK as a whole. That gap reflects the barriers people still face, barriers we should be helping to dismantle. I've seen firsthand the contributions of Hong Kong families in Bracknell. I recently met with our local Hong Kong community, and while I was inspired by their resilience and the way they enriched our town, I also heard about the barriers and uncertainty they now face. And I want to thank the 487 Bracknell constituents who signed the petition on B&O visas we're here to discuss today. One young woman at my meeting told me about how ready she is to continue her studies, but has been priced out of university because she does not yet qualify for home fees. Extending the length of time B&O visa holders must wait to secure settled status also means extending the length of time they are liable to pay international fees, despite living in this country, achieving their A-levels at UK schools and looking to build their adult lives and careers and lend their considerable talents to the UK. Another constituent is a talented professional dancer who teaches local students. She's unable to dance for Britain in international competitions because of her visa status, despite being exactly the kind of role model we should be championing. And I also met a young married couple who have bought a home and started a life in Bracknell, but feel they cannot yet start a family because of uncertainty over their future status. These stories are not abstract policy points, they are the lived experiences of people who are already making an incredible contribution to our country and our community. It was precisely because of these concerns that I, together with Labour colleagues, wrote to the former Home Secretary earlier this summer, and we urged her to ensure that the B&O visa holders are not unfairly disadvantaged by retrospective changes to the settlement route, and that the promises made to Hong Kongers when this scheme was created are properly upheld. At my public meeting, I was also saddened, but not shocked, to hear that some members of the Bracknell Forest Hong Kong community had chosen not to come to the meeting because of the fear of transnational repression. They were concerned that by engaging in the democratic process and speaking to their local Member of Parliament, a right which must be available to every man, woman and child living in this country, they would make themselves targets for the long reach of the Chinese and Hong Kong governments. This is a powerful reminder of why the previous government, with the Labour Party's full support, brought in the B&O visa route in the first place, the Hong Kong National Security Act. We owe it to the Hong Kongers rebuilding their lives in the UK to ensure the B&O visa scheme is properly bespoke, so we can live up to our historic obligations.
Before I call Bell Ribeiro Addy, can I just say that, to the Minister that his socks are in order, and the clerks are excellent, because the first reference to socks in the House of Commons was in 1842 in a manufacturing debate, and to reassure him there's no mention of socks in the rules and behaviour and courtesies in the House of Commons, or indeed in Erskine May any mention whatsoever, which first of course was published in 1842. 44. So members can all be reassured, and certainly the Minister, his socks are in order. There is a ruling. Bell.
Mr Pritchard, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'd also like to thank the Petitions Committee and the member for South Norfolk for bringing forward this debate. Now, when the government introduced its immigration white paper, it proposed increasing the standard qualifying period of indefinite leave to remain from 5 to 10 years. Now, this intent was to dissuade people from coming to settle in the UK and to convince those who are here to leave. Now, welcoming the Minister and his socks to this place, I do want to ask him who it is that they're hoping to dissuade from coming here and who they are hoping will leave. Is it the doctors, nurses, teachers, transport workers and cleaners who kept this country moving during the pandemic and for whom many of us clapped as they put their lives at risk whilst we stayed safely at home? Because it's these sectors reliant on international workers who will be hit the hardest by this policy. Now, I know the government has suggested that high-skilled, high-contributing individuals such as nurses, doctors, engineers and AI leaders could be fast-tracked for settlement, but it remains unclear what this means in practice. For example, it's clear that the ILL period moving from 5 to 10 years will have a negative impact specifically on the NHS workforce, risking an exodus of international healthcare staff and undermining the government's NHS 10-year plan. We're talking about the 1 in 5 NHS staff that are non-UK nationals, the 45% of licensed doctors in the NHS that are international medical graduates, a large number of whom are leaving the UK, mostly due to low pay, the high cost of living and declining quality of life. Many are also citing visa requirements as a reason for leaving. We're talking about the 43.7% of international nurses who left the Nursing and Midwifery Council register in the last year, who had been on the register for less than 5 years. 40% of them said immigration policy was an important factor in this. These departures will have a profound impact on the NHS workforce, which is already depleted and struggling. Instead of taking steps to make it harder for international medical staff to come and stay in the UK, we should be taking steps to encourage them, and for the sake of our NHS, we should be making it easier for them to stay. I'm also deeply concerned that the government has not yet indicated whether the change would apply to those already in the UK. International doctors and healthcare professionals need reassurances now that their statuses won't be affected. This means Hong Kongers, but indeed all of those other migrants too. It's simply unfair and frankly cruel to retrospectively apply an extension to the ILL pathway and would significantly impact those already on the pathway, as well as their families, their employers and their communities. We have to start being frank that the pursuit of net migration targets has actually undermined our economy and our public services. It's created a hostile environment within our communities as well. Changing immigration rules in this way will undo the work that has been done so far to repair our NHS, and I urge the government to reconsider. Now, I want to end on two things. Firstly, though the topic of today's debate is particularly about the changes to indefinite leave to remain for skilled worker visa holders, it should go without saying that a person shouldn't have to belong to a critical sector just to deserve compassion in our immigration system. And secondly, reminder to members, my honourable friend, the member for Poplar and Limehouse, mentioned the top 5 nationalities in the past 5 years that applied to be in the country. We're talking about Nigeria, Pakistan, India, Ghana, Bangladesh, all Commonwealth nations. My honourable friend, the member for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh, also pointed out the rights that they are afforded. And in this country, Commonwealth nationals on any length of visa can register to vote in both local and national elections. And I expect themselves and their British national family members and friends will have views on these issues, so we should take note. Now, the UK has always boasted a diverse workforce in every single sector, and those who come to establish their lives in the UK are a benefit to our society. Bear in mind, as I said it before, they vote here, and our immigration policy should reflect that we value them. Thank you.
Neil Duncan-Jordan.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Now, some months ago, I led a debate in this hall on the Certificate of Common Sponsorship in relation to the social care sector. In that debate, I highlighted the unfair and precarious nature of having an employment visa linked to a single employer rather than the sector as a whole.
The reason why I mention this is because this campaign, which is ongoing, is of course linked to today's debate regarding indefinite leave to remain. Overseas workers have made and continue to make a massive contribution to the UK's health and social care sector. These dedicated staff have meant that we have been able to provide much needed care for some of our most vulnerable individuals. But the proposed changes to the ILR rules could put all that at risk. The adult social care sector is already experiencing a crisis in recruitment. In England, for example, 7% of roles are unfilled. This represents about 111,000 vacancies in March this year. These new proposals will make filling those vacancies even more difficult. Now, I have raised before with the government how the current sponsorship arrangements leave migrant workers open to abuse, with some locked into unfair contracts, and when they raise concerns about their working conditions, they can be threatened with deportation. Employers already have undue power over migrant care workers because their work visa is tied to their employment status. And I will.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way, because this is a very important point, and it comes to the one made by his honourable friend from Middlesbrough earlier, and it is about the stability that people have in their life if they know that they have that indefinite leave to remain. The industry that I have most to do with is the fishing industry, and we've seen an increasing presence of transient workers in recent years, out with immigration rules a lot of the time. And in a handful of cases, and I stress it's just a handful, there has been some really egregious abuse. That is able to happen because these people are forced to live in the shadows. Giving them stability allows them to have that same right and security that we would all take for granted.
I thank the honourable member for that contribution, and I agree with the point that he's making. Any employment status that traps workers into those conditions has to be addressed. And the proposed extension of the ILR from 5 to 10 years will potentially trap those workers into what we can only describe as long-term exploitation. Now, the Immigration White Paper also suggests sweeping changes to the skilled worker visa system. And I had a correspondent, a constituent of mine, Ola Banjo, write to me, and this is what they said. If implemented, this proposed change would create unnecessary instability for thousands of families, including mine. It would prolong uncertainty, increase financial and emotional strain, and discourage people who are already working hard, paying taxes and contributing positively to the UK. Migrants are not just statistics. We are carers, professionals, volunteers and parents raising children who already call this country home. We want to belong, to integrate fully and to continue giving our best to the UK. This proposal would make that harder, not easier. Now, I think Ola Banjo is right to point out that plans to retrospectively change the settlement rules feels like a betrayal. The suggestion that we can change the rules halfway through is grossly unfair. Behind the debate about immigration are real people, and the proposed changes have caused considerable upheaval to many overseas workers that are already here. In fact, virtually all migrant workers will in some way be affected by the changes regarding salary thresholds and new visa conditions. The government has described settlement as a privilege to be earned, but this ignores the valuable contribution that these workers have already made to our country, the economy and their local communities. That's why I would urge the government to reject the current negative rhetoric around immigration, retain the 5-year route for ILR, scrap plans to apply extended qualifying periods retrospectively, and reform the visa system to ensure that sponsorship is sector-wide rather than linked to an individual employer.
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Pritchard. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd like to start by thanking my honourable friend from South North for the way he presented this important debate, and we have had, as we know, over 100,000 people signing up to both of these petitions, including a number from my constituency of Chesterfield. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham North, to his new post, and in wishing him well, say from my perspective that I think that this debate has absolutely expressed the huge contribution that many migrants have made in our constituencies, in our country, and that is a sentiment that's been very strongly made in this debate. But that I think there's absolutely nothing inconsistent in saying that on the one hand we absolutely recognise that contribution that has been made, but on the other hand we recognise the government's desire to reduce the level of net migration that has come in, that it is unsustainable, the number of people that we have coming into our country, and that we can absolutely recognise the huge contribution that migrants have made without in any way undermining the positive steps that the government are trying to take to get this system under control. I agree entirely that Britain is a country that keeps its word, and we should continue to keep our word to the Hong Kongers who've come here, and echo the comment that's been made by many others that it will be a huge propaganda victory for the Chinese government if they're able to say that we are undermining that commitment. And also support what's been said by others about those who've already started down a path, that we shouldn't be changing the rules that we have made to those people. It is important to recognise that many people have got a real uncertainty now, and that we need to say that we are in a competitive environment for many of these skilled migrants. There are many other countries that would like to attract them over there, and if we start pushing them away, making them believe that their commitment to this country won't be honoured by this country, we risk losing people that are absolutely crucial to our public services and to our economy. And so I think we should consider that very seriously indeed. I also believe that my constituent Arinda, who came to see me, her family from Albania, been in the UK for several years, and she is now she came here on the skilled work visa. Her husband and her son were brought here as dependents. They've made their life here, they've joined the local church, they've made huge contribution to local community. And there is real concern amongst her church community that she now might not have the stability that she believed that they should. So I believe that we should offer that certainty to those people who've come on the 5-year route. And also would echo the point made by my honourable friend from Poole about the danger of exploitation of some people who've come on the skilled visa route. I've seen appalling situations, people working in the care industry who are being forced into doing effectively 75-hour shifts over the course of a week, and we're being told, well, if you're not willing to do it, then we're going to scrap the basis on which you've come here and you'll lose your right to be in the UK. We need to make sure that those people who are making an important contribution are properly protected. So I support what the government's doing in trying to tighten up our immigration rules, but I also believe that in this particular case, at the end of that consultation, I hope that the government support what those people who signed this petition have asked for.
Thompson. Thank you very much, Mr Pritchard. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairship today. And can I start by thanking my honourable friend, the member for South Norfolk, for bringing forward this debate today. And indeed, thank my very great honourable friend, the Minister, for taking his position today. When the Hong Kong UK Welcome Programme was established in 2021, Long Eaton in my constituency was chosen as one of the preferred resettlement locations for Hong Kongers. Local people in Long Eaton have very much welcomed our new neighbours to our community. I've spoken to teachers at local schools about how new students from Hong Kong are getting on and doing well, and I've been very pleased to see Hong Kongers establishing new businesses in our town centre. Since being elected as the Member of Parliament for Erewash a little over a year ago, I've sought to engage with Long Eaton's already very active Hong Konger community. And I was very pleased recently to host an event in Long Eaton Town Hall with the Nottingham branch of the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation. We must have all, I think, watched on with admiration in 2019 and 2020 as the people of Hong Kong took to the streets of their city in their millions to defend their civil rights and liberties, their democracy, their fundamental freedoms. Over the past decade, the situation across China has only worsened. Modest gains for the rule of law have been quashed. There has been renewed aggression towards Taiwan and its people, and the appalling persecution of the Uyghur minority has continued. Sadly, terribly, these scenes of heroic bravery on the streets of Hong Kong ended in heartbreak. The national security law, granting Beijing unprecedented powers to police the speech and actions of Hong Kongers, was imposed. Elections were delayed, democracy functionally ended, and harsh laws against protesters enacted. The crackdown saw scenes of horrendous police brutality and human rights abuses. As a result, more than 500,000 people fled the city. Hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers came here to the United Kingdom to seek sanctuary. I would very happily say, and I know many honourable members across the House will agree, that Hong Kong and China's loss has been very much our gain. I'm very glad to have welcomed these Hong Kongers fleeing oppression, violence and injustice to my constituency. Sadly, the government in Beijing is not content with having forced these people from their homes. It still wishes to terrorise them here in the United Kingdom, something we cannot allow to happen if people we have promised safety and security to in our country want to feel comfortable here. I believe it's very important that we remember these points as we consider any alterations to visa regulations in the coming month. Arrest warrants issued in Hong Kong but against Hong Kongers living in Britain are clearly unacceptable. The operation of illegal, unsanctioned police stations in British cities used to kidnap and intimidate are both a deep moral wrong and grievous violation of our national sovereignty. I was shocked and deeply saddened that when I welcomed local Hong Kongers to Long Eaton Town Hall recently, that many expressed that they were afraid to be photographed or videoed on the CCTV at the Town Hall. They raised serious concerns about the proposed new Chinese embassy, feeling that it could become a hub for spying, mass surveillance and perhaps harbour a far greater illegal prison than has so far been operated. I greatly commend the bravery of the people of Hong Kong. I will always speak for the rights of and I will defend Hong Kongers who have moved to Long Eaton and the rest of my constituency, Greater Nottingham and indeed the whole of the United Kingdom. We must protect those who have sought sanctuary in our community against the Chinese government both now and well into the future. I look forward to many years going forward as the Member of Parliament speaking up further for our new Hong Kong and neighbours and their families.
Before I call Lawrence Turner, there is sort of the votes, as we always know, are a movable feast, but it's likely we're to have 8 votes later, so perhaps everybody could keep an eye on the chamber unless they want to come back in, I don't know, 95 minutes. But it's entirely up to members, because I won't be here, but they will. Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I would like to echo the welcome that has been extended to the Honourable Member for Nottingham North and Kimberley in his new post. I know that he will bring to this position the same qualities of diligence and collegiate working that characterised his approach at the MHCLG. Given the level of interest in today's debate, I'll only speak to and in support of the second petition on the Hong Kong BNO visa. I would like to thank the member for South Norfolk and for the able way that he led this debate, and the Petitions Committee for making this debate possible. I would also like to thank the 635 people in Birmingham Northfield who signed the petition, and the dozens of people who made representations at constituency surgeries and in writing. I can do no better than quote one of them. Since settling in Birmingham, we have purchased our own home and integrated into the community. 2 of us are working in the NHS. We made this move not out of convenience, but out of necessity. Fleeing the erosion of human rights in Hong Kong Incidents such as the firing of pro-democracy campaigners, prosecution of journalists and the enactment of the Article 23 law have only reinforced the difficult choice we made to leave. Chairman, our constituents who are watching this debate should know that they are welcome and valued members of our communities. We should recognise too that Hong Kong is clearly a special case. That statement, which I've just read out, is not only a commentary on the deep links of culture and history that bind us together, as important as those links are. The practical reality is that while we may wish that the Chinese government's tightening repression at home and abroad may have lessened within the next 10 years, that hope is contradicted by all available evidence. We need only look at the fate of the Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions, the organising centre of independent labour, which was united indelibly, or linked indelibly to the democracy movement, which was coerced into dissolving itself in 2021. Its leaders are now prosecuted and persecuted, including through abuse of the international arrest warrant system. People like Christopher Sutat Moong, who some members of this House will have heard speak at the conferences of the TUC, the GMB and other UK labour organisations, and who was forced into hiding here under the protection of the Home Office after a bounty was issued for his arrest. I've spoken to a number of my constituents who share that concern that they may themselves be targeted and subject to surveillance. They deserve to have the fear lifted of return to Hong Kong or relocation to another country which may offer lesser levels of protection. Chair, there are other important issues that we could talk about today, such as the need for progress towards greater UK recognition of Hong Kong qualifications. But on the substantive issue subject to the petition, the government has said that it will set out its approach to particular visa routes over the coming months. And while I do not necessarily expect the Minister to preempt that announcement today, I do ask that he acknowledges the strength of feeling shared by so many members in this debate, and that he makes sure that the arguments made today are given full attention by the Home Office, and that our constituents will be given that certainty as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. I congratulate my friend, the member for South Norfolk, for his opening remarks in this debate, and I also welcome the Minister to his place, my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham North and Kimberley. Earlier this year, I held a surgery with Hong Kongers living in my constituency alongside Alison Lowe, who is the Deputy Mayor of West Yorkshire, responsible for policing and crime. Now, while I was so pleased to see the room absolutely packed out, standing room only, it was clear from the questions I was being asked that the number one concern was the immigration white paper and the potential impact on Hong Kongers and their families, people we invited to live here. Now, I do need to make it very clear that we must take extremely strong action on immigration. The British people do demand it, and having functioning borders should be a basic function of the state. Now, the level of immigration to the UK has been too high, both legal and illegal, and the white paper is a decent package of measures to try and bring the numbers down, which should be welcomed. However, we don't want to unfairly penalise those that we have invited here, or people who make a huge contribution to the UK. When the BNO visa scheme was introduced in 2020 by the previous government, it was in response to the imposition of the national security law on Hong Kongers to help them escape political repression. To change the rules now, when the first BNO visa holders are just months away from qualifying for settled status, would be a devastating blow to the Hong Kong community. It would constitute a broken promise. These people have come to the UK under a set of conditions that we determined and at our request. At the very least, even if we were to change the rules, they should never be applied retroactively. And of course, what would happen if we did change the rules? Well, firstly, extending the indefinite right to remain for BNO visa holders would have very little impact on immigration figures. Government data does show that most BNO visa holders arrived in the first 2 years of the scheme between 21 and 23, and since then the numbers have been falling. Currently, BNOs represent about 1.65% of total visa grants, so changing the rules in this area will do very little to change immigration trends. But more importantly still, the Hong Kong community make an immense contribution to the UK, even though they're often prevented from giving their full talents to society because of the limitations they face without settled status or citizenship. I mean, we take university-age students, for example, that we've heard about today. Without settled status, they won't qualify for home fees, making university unaffordable for most of them. Delaying that for a total of 10 years would have a hugely detrimental impact to those young BNO holders who will go on to contribute to the UK throughout their working lives. But why wouldn't we want to increase that contribution as much as we can? And it's also true that a huge number of Hong Kongers in the UK are working far below their qualification or training level, or potentially are unemployed entirely. There are accountants, journalists, engineers, for example, working in roles that don't necessarily match the skills they have. And we've heard that there are some practical steps that the government could take to alleviate some of these problems, which is in our interest. But extending the ILR route for Hong Kongers back to 10 years, delaying further their access to further education, training, citizenship, government support and integration into UK society will obviously make this problem worse. Despite all the obstacles they face today, they are still making a huge contribution to the UK. Now, I'll draw my remarks to a close now with one eye on the time. I urge the Minister to exempt BNO visa holders from any changes to the ILR route or other qualifications for settled status. This country made a promise to the people of Hong Kong, and we should honour it.
Before I call the front benches, updates from the Chamber. There are more members standing apparently now than there were even 10 minutes ago. So I mean, at the shadow ministers and ministers' discretion, I think we can run the debate for the full time, which is great, at 7:30. So Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I'd like to thank the honourable member for South Norfolk for his excellent speech in opening the debate and the contributions from members around the Chamber. I think we all made very clear our very similar feelings on this, and I hope the Government Minister is ready to jump up and answer all of our queries with a very positive response. So I rise today to speak on behalf of more than 265,000 people who've collectively signed these two petitions. Many of these signatures will be from those very people who the change being considered by the government will impact. People who pay their taxes, keep our hospitals running, manage local businesses and serve our communities. Families who came to Britain in good faith, who are now facing extreme uncertainty about their livelihoods. The government's immigration white paper, published in May, proposes to double the wait for permanent British settlement status from 5 years to 10, except for those who qualify under an earned settlement, amongst other key changes. This sudden decision has left hundreds of BNO passport holders and skilled immigrant workers in my constituency and across the country understandably anxious about their futures. I'm under no doubt that after years of Conservative mismanagement, the British immigration system needs to change. It is completely right that the Home Office takes the necessary steps to fix a framework left in tatters. But for months, potentially abrupt changes to qualifying for indefinite leave to remain have been shrouded in mystery for BNO and skilled worker visas. At the very least, these visa holders deserve clarity. And yet, since the publication of the White Paper, clarity is exactly what they have been denied. The government cannot keep these people in the dark, and we need answers today. I'm so proud that my constituency of Sutton and Cheam is home to such a vibrant and inspiring Hong Kong diaspora. Some of the more than 160,000 Hong Kongers who have come to the UK under the scheme implemented by the last Conservative government. Where I live, I see first-hand the contributions Hong Kongers make to my community every day. They serve as business owners, teachers, doctors, community leaders, and since May, as a colleague on Sutton Council. Many fled repression from the CCP and put their trust in a life in Sutton. That trust was not abstract. For many, it was rooted in a promise.
a promise that the BNO visa scheme would provide a safe pathway to rebuild their lives here, with settlement after 5 years and citizenship after 6. The BNO scheme was not an act of charity. It was under a solemn commitment born of Britain's obligation under the Sino-British Joint Declaration when Beijing began to tear away Hong Kongers' freedoms in 2019. It was a recognition of over 150 years of British control of Hong Kong and how our histories and our futures are inextricably linked. In a world of transnational repression orchestrated by the CCP, permanent settlement in Britain is a vital safeguard for Hong Kongers on this visa route. For Hong Kongers who have grasped the BNO lifeline, the prospect of doubling the wait for indefinite leave to remain could be devastating. So many families I've spoken to have built their futures around that promise of a 5-year route. They make the ultimate sacrifice to uproot their lives in Hong Kong and move to this country because they believed Britain would stand by its word. To make BNO passport holders extend to 10-year ILR, the consequences for my constituents would be brutal. Without ILR or a UK passport, many BNO holders are left with a Hong Kong Special Administrative Region passport. Once that expires, they face major barriers to international mobility. For some, travel would become impossible without risking interaction with PRC authorities. Families would be cut off from loved ones, and careers that require international travel would be closed off. Even children born here to BNO parents could be left waiting until they're 11 years old before gaining a passport. The consequences for education are equally as stark. BNO students must secure settled status before qualifying for home fee status at UK universities. Under these new proposals, a 10-year wait would mean most BNO students would face international fees their families simply cannot afford. When the decision was made to take up the BNO route and travel to and settle in the UK, this timing will have been considered and understood. An important consideration for those families fleeing persecution, yet not wanting to compromise their children's future and their access to affordable further education. That timing and opportunity now risk being torn up by this government. This change would see the shutting down of futures and the door closed on an entire generation of young Hong Kongers who want nothing more than to study, work and contribute to this country. Hong Kongers came to places like Sutton to escape censorship, surveillance and persecution. Do we really want to answer their courage with confusion? Recent correspondence from the Home Office to a Labour MP that I'm sure many of us have seen suggested that the existing pathway would remain unchanged for those already holding BNO visas and that the proposed changes to the language requirements would apply to new applicants from April 2026 onwards only. This, however, was contradicted by later correspondence released to a number of letters issued by, I'm sure, members around this room. So I'd like assurances and urge the Minister to reflect carefully before making any changes to ILR for BNO visa holders. Hong Kongers' lives are already clouded in so much uncertainty. They need clear guidance on how any changes to immigration policy will affect them. The impact of this white paper on Hong Kongers would be immense, and assurances must be provided when so much is at stake for so many of my constituents. And what of skilled worker visas? This is the UK's primary visa route for individuals seeking to work here. It includes the health and care workers subcategory, the very nurses, doctors and carers who keep hospitals such as St Helier in our borough running every day and look after our constituents in their homes. Britain cannot hope to attract the best and brightest talent while leaving thousands of those on skilled worker visas in limbo. The Immigration White Paper was published 4 months ago, but those on this immigration visa still have no clarity on what lies ahead for their future here in Britain. These are people who keep institutions like our NHS afloat, who fill critical shortages across our economy and contribute to Britain from day one of their arrival. They deserved certainty on what changes to immigration policy meant for them from the very beginning. The government cannot claim to fix our immigration system by pulling the rug out from those who put their faith in it. Hong Kongers and skilled workers deserve fairness and they deserve stability. So, on my closing note, I urge the Minister to stop changing the rules mid-game. Play fair, as members around this room have all made very, very clear. Stand by your word and the word of the previous Conservative government, who, in all fairness, brought this scheme in with foresight and compassion for the people of Hong Kong. Please give people the certainty to build their lives as fully as they can in this country by retaining the 5+1 time limits for BNO and skilled workers, and I hope to hear the Minister give reassurance of that when he winds up later. Thank you.
Mr Pritchard, and it is, as ever, a pleasure to serve with you in the chair this evening. And may I be, I believe, the first member of my party speaking in this place to welcome the Honourable Member for Nottingham North and Kimberley to his new place. I look forward to working across from him, socks and all. I am grateful to the Member for South Norfolk, the Petitions Committee and the members of the public who have signed the petitions before us today. He is right to note that there are many different strands to this issue. This evening I will speak about the proposed changes to ILR qualification for the skilled worker visa. Over the past 30 years, millions of people have immigrated to Britain. The level of migration to this country has been too high for decades and remains so. Every election-winning manifesto since 1974 has promised to reduce migration. As my right honourable friend, the member for North West Essex, has said, the last government, like the governments before them, promised to do exactly that. But again, like the governments before them, it failed to deliver.
On that point,
I will make a little progress and then perhaps come back to him. It is particularly concerning that the vast majority of people who've come to Britain in the last few years, including many of those on the skilled worker route, are unlikely to contribute more in tax than they cost over their lifetimes through their use of public services and state support. As things stand, the lifetime cost of this recent wave of migration is set to be in the hundreds of billions of pounds. This is one of the biggest scandals in British politics, and most people, including the Prime Minister, now acknowledge that the accelerated migration of the last few years was a profound mistake. And when we make a mistake and have the power to reverse it, it is right that we do so. In the case of this particular mistake, we absolutely have the power to reverse it, and that starts by changing the rules on indefinite leave to remain, or ILR. At the moment, after just 5 years, most migrants can claim ILR, allowing them to stay here indefinitely, access state support and begin the path to citizenship. My Shadow Home Office colleagues and I have repeatedly argued that the qualifying period should be extended from 5 years to 10. But that alone is not enough. No new visas should be issued to, no new ILR status should be granted to, and existing ILR status should be revoked from those who've committed a crime, access state support, or who are unlikely to contribute more than they cost. Those who have no legal way to stay here will then need to leave. That's how immigration works. Many this afternoon have commented on fairness and perceived fairness of retrospective rule changes to those who have come here, a point made in opening by the Honourable Member for South Norfolk and by too many in this debate to list. We can feel great personal sympathy for such people, but our primary, indeed I would argue our only, fundamental responsibility is not fairness to foreign nationals, it is fairness to the British people. It is our sacred duty to put them first, to act in their interests and their interests alone.
Will she give way?
I will.
I thank her for giving way because she's setting out a powerful argument, but what she hasn't touched on is the BNO visa route, which, as I mentioned in my contribution earlier, was introduced by the previous government with support from the Labour Party. So I would just ask her to be really, really clear on this. She talked about mistakes from the previous government. Is she now saying that that was a mistake, or will she take this opportunity to recommit her party to the Hong Kong community, who, after all, we do owe that historic commitment to?
I thank the Honourable Member and thank you, Chair. Our suggested reforms do not apply to Hong Kong BNO visa holders. That is a specific route set up for extraordinary purposes and we believe should be viewed and treated differently. Implementing these policies in full, though, would save the British taxpayer hundreds of billions of pounds. It would relieve pressure on our already stretched public services and lay the foundations for an immigration system which genuinely works in the national interest. But more than that, it would give effect to the democratic wishes of the British people by reversing a costly disaster that nobody voted for and which most people now acknowledge was a catastrophic mistake. So I would urge the government, in the strongest possible terms, to commit to implementing the changes that we have repeatedly proposed, including by applying any changes to ILR to those who are already here. A 5-year visa does not confer a right to apply to settle here indefinitely. Those who come here must make a genuine and sustained contribution to our country. And unfortunately, most of those who have come on the skilled worker route in recent years are unlikely to do so. If, as the Prime Minister says, our, quote, open borders experiment has been a mistake, then why should British taxpayers be saddled with the cost of that mistake for the rest of their lives? Finally, while I do not agree with the argument made by the petition on skilled worker visas, I do believe that this process should be subject to an open and frank public debate. I am closing, I apologise. Will the Minister therefore confirm that applying any changed rules to those already here will be within the scope of the Government's planned consultation on ILR? And will he commit to ensuring that this consultation is open to responses from members of the public?
Minister, and congratulations, Minister.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and I express my sincere gratitude for all the kind words from colleagues on this, my first day in the Home Office, and I have to say what a welcoming party they have proffered for me. Greatly enjoyed it. But I want to start by also expressing my gratitude to my honourable friend, the Honourable Member for South Norfolk. I mean, being on the Petitions Committee in this place is a very special role, a very difficult role, because, of course, he was starting the debate in the spirit of things that he knows and feels, but he was also giving voice to the many hundreds of thousands of people who have signed that petition and earned the right to have their issue debated in this Parliament by their representatives. That's a very profound connection to the British public, and I know the effort that he went in, not just in preparing his speech in terms of the words on the pieces of paper, but in terms of who he's engaged with previously, to make sure that they can hear their voice in this debate. And I think they very much will have done so, and I commend the spirit in which he did that. Now, both petitions relating to the earned settlement proposals set out in the Immigration White Paper, which the previous Home Secretary introduced in Parliament on the 12th of May. So I will keep my remarks within the spirit of those two petitions. And the proposals more generally on the White Paper are important changes. And I think we've seen from the strength of feeling from colleagues in Westminster Hall today just how important it is to them and their constituents. That's why, Mr Pritchard, we're taking the approach that we are taking with this, because we really want to listen to what people are telling us about this. And that's why there's a consultation coming, as has been committed. I can say to colleagues today that that consultation is coming later this year, and we'll make the final decisions and provide details of how the scheme will work after that consultation. So I apologise in advance that for many of the issues that have been raised, I have to say that they will be subject to consultation, but they will, and I think that's the right way in order to make sure we get to the right position. I'll happily give way.
I'm very grateful to him for giving way, and he's absolutely right that we're all here responding to a petition that hundreds of thousands of people have signed. Does he think, like I do, that given the huge public interest there's been in this matter, that it's absolutely extraordinary that the main opposition party has had one person bother to turn up and speak, and that person, the ministers, barely actually talked about the items that were being raised by the petitioners? Doesn't it say absolutely everything about the modern Conservative Party? They don't think today's debate is even worth bothering turning up for.
Well, I mean, it was quite interesting at the beginning of the debate. The chamber was so full. Indeed, many colleagues, including the very unlikely spectacle of the member for Birmingham Northfield crossing the floor. I think people can see who has shown interest in this debate, and they may well draw their own conclusions from it. I'll give way.
And I'm not standing up to defend the opposition in any way, but can we just remember why we're here? Because we're talking about a government that is planning and considering the moving of the goalposts on people who are halfway through an application for ILR. So I know we can point around the room at who's at fault at this, but let's not forget a government is considering moving the goalposts for people who are now going to sit for further months with uncertainty. So let's focus on who's being challenged here in this room today, please. Can we remember that, please, Minister?
Grateful for the honourable gentleman and his harking back to the 2010 to 2015 period there. It felt truly like we were back in other times, but I'll address his points as I go along. My intention, Mr Pritchard, is to set out our stalls of government to address the points that colleagues have raised, though I think there are some clear themes that hopefully, well, I certainly should be able to do in the time available to us. And as we've set out in the white paper, we recognise strongly and value strongly the contribution that legal migration makes to our country. And that if people want to come to Britain to start a new life, but they can do so, but they must contribute, must learn our language and must seek to integrate. And similarly, if employers want to bring workers from overseas, then they must also invest in the skills of workers already in Britain. And as we've heard, the previous government lost control not just of the number of people arriving, but of the entire system, with serious consequences for public confidence, which plays out, I have absolute certainty, in all of our mailbags on an every day, but also has impacts on the working of our economy, on public services, on the housing market, and on community cohesion. And we are here today, and we're debating this today, because net migration quadrupled in the space of just 4 years to a record high. Overseas recruitment shot up while the training in the UK was cut. Lower skilled migration soared while the proportion of UK residents in work plummeted. And hundreds of thousands of people were given visas to arrive and stay in the UK, but without the requirements for them to speak or learn English so they could get the best of their time here. We know, and we hear from our constituents, that migration needs to be managed so that we support families, communities, and create cohesion with proper support, as I say, for integration, for people to seek that better life. But there has to be clear rules about contributing to the UK, where the pace of migration is too fast or where integration is too weak. It makes it harder to maintain that confidence, those community bonds, and those relationships. And fundamentally, people must see the rules clear, being clearly expressed, clearly respected and properly enforced. And for the system to be credible, those decisions must be fair, and misuse and exploitation, as we've heard from many colleagues about the risk, must be tackled fast. And along the way, preventing illegal migration, overstaying, exploitation and undercutting. It is our position as a government that the immigration system must be properly controlled and managed. I will in a second. To my honourable friend, but I just want to say I appreciate the strength of feeling that colleagues have expressed today. I would caution them from not defending a status quo that doesn't work, and to be in that spirit of how we might improve that status quo. I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. On the reasonable point about English language, the bar has been raised and he's set that out. Is he content that there are sufficient resources devoted to the teaching of English language? Because that will be a charge that's put to us if it is that we make that demand and don't put the resources to match that demand.
I think that's an excellent point my honourable friend mentions. I mean, I'm going to turn to the BNO status shortly, but I think of the work that goes on in my community around English language there, similarly around those who've come from Ukraine in the last few years, and that has been transformative for those people. And as we go along and as we make the proposals in the white paper law, of course we'll be considering those very important accompanying conversations as well. Now, it is a long-standing point of consensus across this place that settlement has been a privilege and not a right. We know that settlement in the UK brings significant benefits. So the proposals that we've set out in the Immigration White Paper reflect our view that people who benefit from settling in the UK should first make a proportionate contribution. And we've heard so much about those valuable contributions that honourable members' constituents are making. And that is why, that although we're setting a baseline qualifying period for settlement at 10 years, we will allow those who make meaningful contributions to reduce that qualifying period, something the Honourable Member for Edinburgh East and Musselburgh referenced. Now, turning to skilled work, the subject of the first petition. Skilled worker visa holders make an important contribution to our economy and to our public services, filling essential skills and labour market gaps. But for too long, sectors have become reliant on them to fill those gaps and have not sought to invest in our domestic workforce. The reforms we've set out in the Immigration White Paper are addressing the balance and reversing the long-term trends of overseas recruitment, increasing at the same time as reducing investment in skills and training and increasing levels of unemployment and economic activity in the UK, which I know we're all concerned about in our own communities. Indeed, we implemented the first of those reforms in late July, lifting the threshold for skilled workers to the RQF6 level, and we've commissioned the Migration Advisory Committee to advise on future changes to salary requirements and the temporary shortage list. And we've established, Mr Pritchard, a new labour market evidence group, which also met at the end of July and will continue to meet quarterly in order to support our aim to tackle the underlying causes of workforce shortages and ensure that growth-driving sectors have access to the skilled workers they need now and into the future. We must have, and I speak obviously as someone who a couple of days ago was the local growth minister, have that same vigour for our children in our schools today, that they're going to get brilliant opportunities and the training they need there first. Now, colleagues have talked considerably and with great passion about the Hong Kong British National Overseas Visa route. And I want to take a moment to reflect on what the BNO route means, not just for those who've made use of it, but for this country more generally. Our country has a long-standing and unique connection to the people of Hong Kong. As a former British territory, many Hong Kongers hold BNO status, a recognition of that shared history, as my honourable colleague from Milton Keynes Central said earlier. And I commend the previous government. I was supportive of it in this place, of their launching of the BNO route in January 2021 as a direct response to the imposition of the national security law in Hong Kong. And through this, the UK honoured its historic and moral commitment to the people of Hong Kong by creating a bespoke immigration route for those seeking safety, stability and a future rooted in those shared values. And since its launch, close to 225,000 people have been granted a BNO visa and over 160,000 have arrived in the UK. And like many of the migrants across the immigration system, Hong Kongers have quickly become an integral part of both our economy and local communities, with high levels of employment, education participation and community engagement, and have made their homes in key cities and regions across the UK. I think in Nottingham, the extraordinary contribution Hong Kongers make, whether it's in our public services, whether it's in the private sector or the community and voluntary sector, I think my honourable friend, a member for Rushcliffe, who takes such a great interest in this area, a year or so ago when we met with representative organisations of the extraordinary contribution they're making. I will stop short of saying whether I consider them to be from Nottingham now, because that, due to local government reorganisation, is a very sticky point, as it is also for my honourable friend in Broxtowe, and indeed possibly my honourable friend for Erewash mentions Long Eaton, and I'm not even going to go anywhere near that. But those people, their presence is not just valued, but they are making a huge and positive and lasting contribution to our national life. And we recognise as a government the significance of this community, not just for what's gone so far, but for the role they will play in the years ahead. So I want to assure members that this government remains steadfast in supporting members of the Hong Kong community in the UK and all those who will arrive in the future, and we remain fully committed to the BNO route, which will continue to welcome Hong Kongers. But I do know how important the ability to obtain settled status is to the Hong Kong community, and that is why I can assure them we are listening to their views about the route to settlement and will continue to do so. And in the meantime, of course, I will shortly, but in the meantime, the current routes for settlement under the BNO route will continue to apply. I'll happily give way.
Can I merely tempt him, given how profoundly he's setting out the importance of the Hong Kong community in the UK, to take this opportunity not only to recommit to supporting the Hong Kongers with the current route, but in fact use this as an opportunity to fix some of the things in the BNO visa route that have made it not quite as bespoke as it was originally intended through this process. Will he look at that as he looks at the overall immigration system?
Well, the honourable gentleman very kindly seeks to tempt me off topic slightly here, but he's made an excellent point, and I have heard it. But I do want to go back to the fundamental point around consultation. It is only right, we've heard from colleagues of the importance that this is to people all over the country. It is only right that those who may be affected by these proposals have a fair and equal opportunity to make their voices heard. That's precisely why we're moving forward with a consultation, to ensure that any decision taken is rooted in evidence, with fairness, and has a clear understanding of the real world impact on those effects. I'll give way in a second, and I hope that members will accept in that sense that I won't prejudge the outcome of that consultation before it's taken place. I'll give way to my honourable friend from Rushcliffe.
Thank him for giving way and for his speech. Firstly, I would just note that the clock is ticking, and I'd like him to recognise that, so it is really important that consultation is done quickly. But with that in mind, does he know at this stage whether different groups will be carved out within that consultation, for example, the BNO scheme, so there will be separate opportunity to comment on that and other routes?
Well, we'll be very much opening the consultation up for everybody to make the important points about how the system relates to them. So, you know, the opposition spokesperson asked for that clarity. I can give that clarity too. Everybody will get that important opportunity to say how the proposals would affect them. I mean, that takes me to some of the things that colleagues have said. So, I will give way go on, before I move on.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate you giving way. Just on the point of consultation, clearly, if there is to be a consultation, it's a further few months of uncertainty for many people on this scheme. Do you have an ambition for when the consultation will be... Sorry, does the Minister have ambition for when the consultation will be concluded and we will hear the results of that consultation time frame?
I can't give the honourable gentleman that time frame today, but I appreciate the point he's made about how that, you know, how people will feel and, you know, and the time pressures people feel. I accept that point. I'll give way very quickly.
Thank you very much, the Minister, for giving way. Given the unanimity of the feeling around the room today about the importance of the BNO visas and the uncertainty that the consultation is creating, could the Minister just put on record that he recognises that uncertainty and that it will be foremost in his mind as he develops policy going forward?
I absolutely do. There's a danger when we talk about a system, and this is a system, that we forget the fact that these are individual people with lives, hopes and dreams at the root of it. And of course, we'd always want to treat those people with the utmost dignity and yes, to make sure there isn't any more uncertainty than is necessary. But the point of consulting, you know, I've been in this place now, this is my 8th year, and I watched 7 years of immigration policies just fall out of the sky, many times chasing headlines rather than trying to change the system. And the question everybody asked was, why on earth didn't you consult on this? So, you know, there is good reason for engaging with people properly. My honourable friends from Poplar and Limehouse, Richmond Park, Truro and Falmouth, Salford, Clapham and Brixton Hill all talked about what the scope of the change is, who will be affected. That's the point of having that consultation, because we appreciate that people's circumstances can be very different. That's why we want people to come forwards with how the proposals might affect them. Similarly, my honourable friend in his opening from South Norfolk, but as well my colleagues from Stratford and Bow, Bracknell Forest, Chelsea and Fulham, Ashford, Poole, all talked about transition in general. And again, we appreciate that the strength of feeling that's been expressed there, and feedback on this point is very helpful. We've had some since the publication of the white paper as well, and that's helping us frame the consultation before we finalise any policy following that. And again, I've heard strongly honourable colleagues from Hendon, South Cambridgeshire, Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Carshalton and Wallington, Rushcliffe, Milton Keynes North, Birmingham Northfield, Warrington South, I've lost my writing here, Bolton South and Walkden, Bolton West, Chesterfield, Erewash, about particularly their strength of feeling with regard to Hong Kongers and our profound connection, which I hope they see that I share, as well as their proud connection. Also, my honourable friend, the member for Leeds South West and Morley, made that point. And then just before I finish, to reference my honourable friend from Middlesbrough and Thornaby East and the racism that his constituents have endured in their service in the NHS. That's totally unacceptable, and I would like to add my solidarity to his, and that is coming from the TUC. And then just to address a couple of final questions before handing back to my honourable friend with enough time for him to sum up. He talked about diplomatic consequences, and I want to give him the assurance that we have engaged with FCDO on this issue, and we recognise the diplomatic interests around the BNO route, and will be continuing to consider those impacts carefully. Around impact assessments that he and the member for Monmouthshire and Glyndŵr expressed. And again, it is right that colleagues see impact assessments after we have finalised proposals, but the point of the consultation is that we don't yet know that final stage. That's why we're having those conversations, and of course impact assessments will be carried out at the right moment. And then finally, my honourable friend from Ealing Central and Acton and the honourable member for Edinburgh South West raised study, and international students are crucial to the UK, to the city of Nottingham, to our universities and our economy, and they allow us to have that world-class connection to our higher education sector and are an important pillar of growth. But it is essential that opportunities to study in the UK are given to individuals who are genuinely here to do just that, and that the universities who sponsor those individuals to study here are treating that responsibility with the seriousness it deserves. That's crucial to public confidence. So to finish, again, I congratulate the honourable gentleman and colleagues for what's been a brilliant debate. There's a lot of interest for good reason. There's a lot more work to do going forward for good reason, but I hope that those watching have seen that we do want to get this right. We are going to be moving forward with a consultation. I look forward to engaging along the way in that process.
Ben Goldsworth to wind up.
Mr Pritchard, and I think today's debate is a perfect example of what the e-petitions committee is very good at doing. It's being able to bring these topics to the forefront of a brand new minister. So at the top of his box now is talks about these two e-petitions. I think also there is a huge amount of thanks I need to give to not only to the petitions committee themselves for all the hard work and effort that went into setting up this process, but also to the stamina of our guests who are in the gallery for staying for the full 3-hour debate. I hope that those watching at home can realise this is the best of Parliament, where we speak with more light than heat, and where we look at the instruments in front of us and we take them issue by issue, and we don't decide to turn them into a mudslinging match, but in terms of actually looking at these projects in how we can better our country going forward.
The question is that this House has considered e-petitions 727360 and 727356 relating to the qualifying period for indefinite leave to remain. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. On the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned. Have a good evening and enjoy the votes.
Very well, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.